Good morning everyone and welcome. My name is Chris Gibbs, CEO of triSearch. On behalf of the entire team, I welcome you to this morning's hands-on AML CTF Enrolment Workshop. We know your time is valuable, and on a day where your inboxes are full and your calendars are packed, the fact that more than 900 of you have chosen to spend the next 3.5 hours with us today says everything about how seriously you're taking this. The 29th of July AUSTRAC enrolment deadline is approaching rapidly. Let's take a look at the AUSTRAC numbers from last Friday, the 5th of June. Of the approximately 90,000 Tranche 2 gatekeeper reporting entities now captured under the AML CTF Act, just over 11,000 had enrolled. Let me put that in context for you. 11,000 total enrolled out of 90,000 entities. 820 of those are conveyancers, 2,280 are law firms. 820 conveyancers, 2,280 law firms out of tens of thousands of practitioners who are legally required to be enrolled. These numbers tell us exactly why the next 3.5 hours matter so much. Not just for compliance, not just to avoid AUSTRAC's attention, but because the community of conveyancers and property lawyers sits at the very centre of Australia's property transactions, and the integrity of that system depends on you stepping up. Today we're going to help you do exactly that. By the end of this session, you will not only just understand your obligations, you'll have started building your AML CTF program, live, in real time, together. A few quick housekeeping issues before we get into it. This session is being recorded and will be made available to all registrants within a few days. So if you need to step away at any point, you won't miss anything permanently. Please use the Q&A panel in Zoom to submit your questions as they come to you throughout the session. We'll be taking them live, and we have a dedicated Q&A segment built into the program. So hold your questions there and we'll get to them. Before we go further, I'd like to take a moment. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet and work today, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise the deep and continuing connection of First Nations peoples in country, culture and community across Australia. Now to make the most of today. You'll need access to the triSearch Compliance Centre. If you haven't already, please open your login now and have it ready. We'll be building your AML CTF program step by step in real time. So you want to be on the platform as we go. If you run into any access issues, please email support@trisearch.com.au and someone will get on to you promptly. If you're not currently a TriConvey or triSearch user, that's completely fine. You can absolutely follow along using your own platform. The process Richard and Mark will walk through us today applies regardless of whatever system you're working in. Let me introduce you to the people who are going to make the next 3.5 hours count. First, Richard Storey, Risk Consulting Partner at Grant Thornton Australia. Richard brings deep expertise in AML CTF compliance and financial crime risk, and he'll be guiding us through what the legislation actually requires of you, clearly, practically and without the jargon. Next, Mark Pinto, Major Account Manager here at triSearch. Mark will be with you in the Compliance Centre throughout, working you through the platform live on screen as you follow every step in real time. And there's the person who really made today possible, Jenny Tonner. Jenny is President of the Australian Institute of Conveyancers New South Wales and Board Member of REI New South Wales and owner of Cremorne Conveyancing. But more than just any of these titles, Jenny saw what was happening in the community. She saw the gap between the compliance deadline and the enrolment numbers. Apologies for that. And then decided to do something about it. The session isn't a generic webinar. Jenny's direct response to what the community needs. Actually, needs right now, and it reflects exactly what the client needs and the leadership of the profession requires today. Jenny, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the triSearch AML workshop for conveyancers. As you all know, the commencement of AML CTF obligations for our profession on 29 July is fast approaching. I could see a real need in our industry for practical, hands-on support, not just high-level theory, not just generic training, to help conveyancers get their AML CTF program in place and to work through the enrolment process with AUSTRAC with confidence. With that in mind, I reached out to Chris Gibbs and their team at triSearch, and they immediately came on board to help make this workshop a reality. Chris, thank you, and thanks also to the whole triSearch team for your support and commitment to helping our conveyancers be properly prepared and fully compliant by 29 July. I'd also like to extend a very warm thank you to Richard Storey from Grant Thornton for giving us his time and expertise today. Richard, we really appreciate you being here to guide us through the practical steps and answer all those questions that are top of mind for everyone. Our shared goal today is simple: to ensure that every conveyancer leaves here, including myself, feeling clearer, more confident and ready for the new AML CTF regime.
Thank you, Jenny. What you just heard is not just a corporate talking point. It's the voice of someone who has been in the trenches of this profession for decades, who has seen firsthand what these changes mean to practitioners on the ground, and who decided, rather than wait for someone else to sort it out, built the response herself. That's the spirit that has been brought into more than 900 of us gathering here today. And it's exactly the kind of community leadership that will define how our profession navigates Tranche 2. So let's get into it. I'll now hand over to Richard Storey from Grant Thornton, who will frame the compliance landscape for us before Mark takes us into the Compliance Centre. Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Jenny, for those kind words, and welcome everyone to today's session. So, compliance framework, 19 days and counting until the deadline of 1st of July, when you actually, everyone in the audience, I presume, really needs to have established your AML CTF program. Now, that includes enrolling with AUSTRAC as an option. You've got an extra 28 days there, as we mentioned earlier, to the 29th of July. So we're going to take you through both the building of your AML CTF program using the Compliance Centre from triSearch, and also how to enrol with AUSTRAC. So both of those things will be covered today. Now, at the moment, I guess the approach of AUSTRAC and the regulatory posture and the framework that we're operating within is an expectation that you'll make every endeavour to have an AML CTF program in place by the 1st of July, to have trained your staff and to have appointed your AML compliance officer, and to have made a real effort to begin being able to ask the right questions of your clients to enable you to assess the money laundering and terrorism financing risk of dealing with those particular clients. So make ready. AUSTRAC's expectation is that you'll make every effort to do this, not that you'll be perfect. They understand that the 90,000 entities that are coming on board as Tranche 2 now are not experts in AML, that you've got a lot of learning to do and a lot of getting used to the framework and the environment that you operate in under the AML CTF regime. So don't let perfection get in the way of making a really strong effort at getting towards compliance. That's the key message from AUSTRAC. So let's get into it now. Mark's going to take us through an orientation session of the Compliance Centre, the triSearch Compliance Centre. So he'll show you the setup there, and that will enable you to walk through this session for the next 3.5 hours, I think it is, Jenny and Chris. Yep. So it's a long session, so we'll give you a little bit of that framework, a little bit of that setup in the Compliance Centre first, and then we'll talk you through and demonstrate how to enrol with AUSTRAC. And then what we'll do is step you through, piece by piece, the building of your AML CTF risk assessment and the resulting policies and procedures, all of which formulates your AML CTF program. And getting all of that ready in the next 19 days is essential to assure your basic compliance. So, what I might do now, Mark, is ask you, if you wouldn't mind, giving that Compliance Centre overview on screen.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having us all here today. I will just navigate across now to our triSearch webpage. Now, a bit of housekeeping to start with. I think it was important because we do plan on taking you guys live through the system and guiding us. As one of Jenny's really big pushes today was to take this live. So we're going to be working within some demo accounts and dropping in and out of them. If we are hoping and praying that there are no glitches and issues, but if there is, we do have some backup plans and we have support on hand as well.
We'll just give everyone your phone number.
Yeah, direct, yes, yeah, the work one which I've turned off. So for starters, I want to talk about how at least we go and access the Compliance Centre, and we do know that there have been some issues with permission levels. There are some issues around firm admin access being needed. So what I'd like, if everyone is following along, if they can do this now and attempt to access the Compliance Centre through their triSearch website. So this can be launched either through your TriConvey. There is an AML tab that does sit there. It will take you into it. Others that do through our website, they're free to access it through a website. You will find this in the top right corner of your screen. You can enter the Compliance Centre. Now, the big thing I want to do first here is really get everybody ready when we do progress to building the Compliance Centre, that they have the right access that they need. If you have tried to access it now and you are a firm owner and you have not landed on the page that you're looking at right now, and it might say something like your system still needs to be set up, what I'd really like you to do at the moment, because we do have a bit of time before we get there, I think we're going to push through AUSTRAC enrolment first, is make your way to your emails. And I've got a draft email just for suggested wording that you can use right now. The email is support@triconvey.com.au. If you are the firm owner, can you please put the firm name in there? A subject line of Compliance Centre access, firm admin required will do. I think our support team is ready and willing to look at these things. And it's just a short message saying, I'm the firm owner and I cannot access my Compliance Centre. Can you please update those details?
So screenshot that.
Screenshot this if you can. If you want to write it down, we definitely can. I will push back into it. Obviously, if you call the support line, they'll also help. I just think with the volume we potentially might receive right now, emails could be the best way, and our team will just work through them one by one.
Great.
Okay. I'll push back into the Compliance Centre. Now, we will be going through this in a lot of detail, and Richard and Jenny will be picking this apart step by step. I'm just going to go through a bit of a relatively quick walkthrough of what it looks like. Let's get an idea of what the system actually looks like when you do land in it. The first steps would be setting this up, and we will go through this process in detail. And there are some permissions that we will be setting up and talking about roles at some point. I'm just going to quickly speed through, enter my own details for the time being. If I can get it. Okay, so once we have set that up, and we will talk about that process, you will land on a page that looks like this. This is effectively your home base. For any compliance officer, this will definitely be where they will do a lot of their work from. They will be seeing all of the different escalations that flow in, a lot of the different checks, and the open items will sit on this landing page. So this is going to be a really good spot. Your compliance officers, if you are also one, you'll become very familiar with this page. Yeah. Okay. The first things that we will really look at doing, if we have not registered with AUSTRAC, there is for the compliance officer and firm owners, the governing bodies, there'll be an ability to add your AUSTRAC number at a later date. So that is always there. It's not something you need right at the outset.
Yeah, that's important because you can come back and enrol with AUSTRAC after you've done your program.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to be enrolled in order to build the AML CTF program.
We have included some quick drop-down links to the AUSTRAC website, a lot of the starter kits, and particularly the enrolment tab. We will be using this very shortly to go through the process, at least as far as we can without submitting any dummy details to AUSTRAC. Once that shows general navigation across the top, then we move into what the sort of 4 steps that we really need within the Compliance Centre to get your firm set up and operational by, or at least ready to be compliant by 1 July. And that will be our firm risk assessment, and we will step you through this in a lot of detail. There is a risk assessment builder. It does guide you through it as best you can. But thankfully we've got Richard and Jenny here to really nut down some of those risks and what they actually look like on the ground. And we will take you through that. If there are any questions, you'll have the questions, you can load them in, and we'll get Richard to answer as many as we can at the end of it.
Go along. Yeah.
Once that step is completed and you've got a holistic risk assessment of your business, you would push into building your policy in the process for your firm, for your practice. Again, for most of us here, we can use the builder that is in with our system. It is piggybacking or using the AUSTRAC packs for the specific sector.
Starter kits, yeah, so we've digitised the AUSTRAC starter kits. So building your AML program in the Compliance Centre is building a compliant program by definition.
And once we have those 2 steps in place, we can push on to onboarding your staff members. It is a requirement, and I will go into more detail what that looks like, but we do have to onboard staff and keep records, I believe, for up to 7 years of onboarded staff.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, good. I do have some of the technical stuff, not all of it. This will be a landing page. Now, this is a tab that will only be seen by a governing body or compliance centre. So it is really controlled at the highest level. Your general staff and client-facing staff, I believe we call them within the system.
Yep.
They won't have access to this tab. They'll be able to onboard themselves through the normal process, and this can be monitored and kept up to date by
So
a
their
firm owner.
personal information that you're putting in there and uploading is protected?
It's protected.
Yep.
It sits with the firm owner and somebody and a compliance officer who should be at a executive level or a decision-making level.
Okay.
So that won't be going distributed anywhere, and it can be kept on record, and when it is needed, if it is ever needed, ready to be drawn across and submitted to AUSTRAC if that does come. We will go into this in more detail, but you can also monitor your staff training. There is a training tab. This can be seen by all staff and is required that all staff are trained and have completed training by 1 July to start offering and providing designated services. This is a really good resource, I believe, and I think it has answered some questions before today for some users that have gone through these modules. At the moment is 10 very beautiful, videos.
Some of which I'm in. So
okay, and
thank you, Mark.
yeah. So Grant Thornton really did a lot of work with the team here and has built some educational videos that you will enjoy watching, I'm sure.
Yep.
And once you have completed that, each staff member, there is a quiz to complete. And the idea of this is showing, obviously, that you have completed the training and you have at least the basic necessities of AML compliance.
That's right. That's very. These training videos are the basic training level for AML CTF that all members of your firm should go through just to get a very ground level understanding of what AML is and what your role is in the AML CTF regime. There are further role specific training videos that are being uploaded into the Compliance Centre next week, and they are specifically targeted towards the AML compliance officer, the senior managers and the governing body, and also addressing some of the stickier areas like reliance and some of those sorts of specific client due diligence areas as well. So they'll all be in there as role specific and subject specific training videos next week.
And it's actually a really good point, because it's good. It's one of the things we talk about is these training videos will be updated. They will be, as there are changes and things pivot within the obligations, this will continue to be updated, and is something to be monitored at the compliance officer's level. Obviously, they can come back in and they will see that the training particular updates here will change to an in progress or not complete. So, and I believe there will be notifications going out within our system to compliance officers that there have been additional videos drawn in, so that can be managed within a firm level to get the staff to go back into their training and complete the additional modules that they haven't completed.
When I completed those sections for myself, those videos, I mean, they were fantastic, very educational, but it was like, well, what does that mean to a conveyancing firm? Because there's different
generic.
levels of where risk starts and when we decide when we want to take risk. So I can see why there were questions and queries. And doing it myself, I realised, okay, we need to be...
There's more to this.
There's more to this, and we need it to be more industry specific. But yeah, I do. Fantastic videos. I mean, I passed, so if I passed, you know.
They must be good.
It must be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important that we work out where how this lands on the ground floor. I think, Jenny, that's a big point that you pressed. Is there are obligations, but there's also a way to carry a matter and complete transactions.
Yeah, we need, and
so
we'll
we've
go
got to
through
find
that
out
today.
what that looks like.
It's very important for us, I think.
There is also an AUSTRAC's reports tab that will be populated as data starts to flow in, and this will be available to the compliance officer to progress and submit reports as they need. And we do also have a reliance agreement or reliance functionality. Now, we are having another webinar on this, and I'll talk to this a little bit later when we get there, and that'll explain how this can sort of tie in between conveyancers and property solicitors and real estate agents, and trying to assist them in the onboarding of their staff and meeting their obligations, and possibly also getting you some additional referral work at the start of it. But there is another webinar on that, so I won't go into too much detail. Now, once that is all completed, you will have essentially in the Compliance Centre the 4 steps that you really need to have set up before 1 July, and then you are in the best position to start being compliant by 1 July. Beyond this, the way in which we are bringing transactions into the Compliance Centre has now been moved across into our VOI order, and that has now opened up into what we call an AML onboarding, including VOI order. Now we'll go through this in a lot more detail a little bit later on.
Yep.
I will be just showing you at least the early stages of that, and we can revert back to this when we do start to go through the client onboarding and client due diligence. Effectively, you will commence a VOI order. For those who are using TriConvey, there is within your matter, you'll have your triSearch tab. It will load what we're now calling a OneFlow page, and your VOI orders for that particular matter will sit there ready for you to commence and also come back to. Something that's really positive in the system now is because we have shifted this onto a moving order that can be reverted back to, and things can be edited and changed for AML compliance purposes. It will always be there for you to access. If I am to be going through this a little bit later on in the demo, in a demo account, I'll be doing it from the triSearch website. For those of you that are familiar with TriConvey, you will know that data pulls across from your matter automatically. If we were to have a quick little look, this is the new landing page that I think a lot of you may have already seen, because we do have this functionality available, and the idea of this is to get practitioners ready for what they might start using come 1 July, at least have a view of it. I won't push past this point at the moment. I think we can go back and leave
Into
our...
AUSTRAC?
Yep, and we can move into AUSTRAC.
Pardon me, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So look, what we're going to do now is step you through an AUSTRAC enrolment process, just so you get familiar with it and you get an understanding of the sort of data and information that you'll need. Don't panic if you don't follow the bouncing ball all the way through this enrolment process. You don't need to enrol before you develop your AML CTF program. And you do have up until the 29th of July to fulfil that enrolment obligation. So what we'll do is we'll get Mark to step you through an AUSTRAC enrolment process so you can follow it through. And as I say, if you don't get all the way through it, if you don't have some of the information about your business that you need, just make a note of the information that you need. And when you've got that information handy, you can go back in and complete your enrolment with AUSTRAC. Okay, so I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I think that's clear. I think we've got the timelines and the dates clear.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this one is an AUSTRAC-based online registration. That is not one of triSearch's systems, so
Yeah,
I
that's a
am
good
going to
point
do
to
my best to navigate through this. We obviously had some trial runs. What I'm going to do now is probably the easiest way I found to access it, because AUSTRAC's website is a little bit difficult to navigate, at least the early stages of.
Yeah.
Clunky.
And it is also like a two-step process, isn't
Yes.
it? So you've got to go into AUSTRAC online, create an account, and then you enrol your actual
Correct.
your entity. And so, essentially any conveyancing business, any legal practice will need to consider if they're offering designated services, and for conveyancers, you all are. So that's pretty straightforward. So that means you do need to enrol.
It is a bit clunky, but it's immediate.
It is immediate.
You get
very
your
quick.
reference number to start your enrolment, and once you finish your enrolment and your number is given to you pretty much straight away.
Pretty much straight away.
So it's good. It's good that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's what you don't know if you've never done it before that raises these kinds of questions.
Well,
Yeah.
And I guess
we
that's a
need to
good
talk
point
about.
of Richard being here is that we can do this live and he can
Exactly.
answer those technical questions that
Exactly.
have stumped a lot of people.
Yeah.
Looking forward
Spotlight
to
on
that.
you,
Yeah,
buddy.
yeah, exactly. And look, just in sort of overview, what the sort of things that you need to enrol with AUSTRAC are things like your actual business name, your ABN, business address, you've probably got that on the top of your head, the principals, the owners of the business, their details, and the services that you offer. And that's a bit of a trick for us all, because when you go through the enrolment process online, deciding which service you actually offer isn't as straightforward as it may seem. So we'll talk to that when we hit it in the demo. I think it's worthwhile doing, because I think, Jenny, you found that as well when you were trying to select the drop-down business that you're actually
The
in.
business.
Yeah.
It doesn't say conveyancers.
Yeah.
So that's...
Very disappointing, because it's conveyancers, for goodness sakes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right, so we'll
Okay.
take you through that, and hopefully we'll hit those little points.
When we
as
get there,
go.
I'll pause, and I think you guys will see them coming up and we can talk through them as well, which should help the people follow along at home.
Absolutely.
The quickest way I've found is to use the Compliance Centre links, and you'll find that again in the top right corner. It seems to skip you through a lot of the mess that I was struggling to navigate earlier. The first one I would move to is Enrol With Us overview. I don't think we're going to go through the very lengthy overview page at the moment, but it is something that I think can help, particularly as you start to use the system and things get a bit confusing. And this is the first step that Richard spoke about. So it is a create a user to enrol first, and once that is completed, then you can start to register a business. If you click on that link, it should take you to a login page that looks something like this. I'm going to sign up to enrol a new business, and we're going to try this live, so this should be fun.
Fingers crossed.
If it doesn't work, we do have some backups that I will move into, but I'm trying to give you as much of the guided experience as we can.
Yeah, they say you should never work on live TV with children, animals, or technology. So at least we've only got technology.
Jenny challenged us with that one. She really wanted to have a guided workflow, so we said we'll put this together as best we can. Hands on is hands on.
And look, I only did this on the long weekend.
Yep.
That was the first opportunity.
I'm
Oh my
running
God, these
into
things
classic.
drive me
I don't, and I
nuts.
really struggle with these actually.
Yeah.
So
Some of
this
them
could
are
be-
very difficult.
So all the cars. Apologies for
Okay.
this.
This could be an interesting test of our capabilities right up front.
Can we see any
Oh,
other
here you
cars
go
here?
then,
They're
mate.
quite
Do you need some
blurry.
help, mate?
I might need a bit of help. Are we seeing another car?
I find
in
those
there?
really hard to
Maybe
do
a
as
car
well.
there.
Oh, yeah.
Is this?
Okay, if at
Oh,
home, if you
come
can
on,
see any
Buzz.
cars, let us know.
Okay.
All right, we can get
That was
through it.
fun.
Okay. So once you have put your email in, you will receive an email, obviously, to verify that it is you. I am hopeful that
Okay, cool.
we will just wait
Yeah,
for it
it's very-
to roll in, and I have made sure there is nothing.
My email takes
Personal?
ages. The security checking of our emails is quite comprehensive.
Yes.
So all those sort of verification emails take forever to come through.
Click the link.
Thank you, Grant Thornton IT. Excellent security.
Unless, oh, this is actually a good point, because I had this happen before, and it might end up in something
your
to
spam
check
box.
in the junk mail now.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah, just
receive
check
all
send
folders,
receive.
and this was the one that I was nervous would not roll in.
So this is very typical of what might happen to you at home if you're doing this at
Oh, we have Mimecasted issues
in
as well.
sync with us. That it will take a little bit of time to get through the verification. So once you have gotten through that verification, though, you've then got effectively you've got your identity, if you like, your account with AUSTRAC Online, and that's important because AUSTRAC will communicate to you through AUSTRAC Online. So you will get things like a heads up about an annual compliance report that you'll need to do down the track. You'll get a heads up around any changes, substantial
I don't think we're
changes,
gonna have much luck
and
here, Jenny.
guidance that they might
We do have some
provide to
backups.
all enrolled reporting entities. So this is important, and it's important to get the right email address attached to your online account. So the good thing about this taking us a bit of time is it gives you guys time to do it in your own business and for yourselves.
Yeah, they're probably already halfway through
They
it.
might be halfway
Yeah.
through. Please feel free to move ahead.
I will continue. If not, I can move into a backup, but it will have some pre-filled data, but we can still move through the
Yeah, that's
step-by-step
fine.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we might.
Let's attempt to...
Because so you get a number, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, a login.
A login.
Yeah.
You gotta log in. Yeah.
And then you log in and then you start your
That's right.
enrolment.
That's
Yeah.
right. So that first step is creating that online account, and that's what you then use to create the enrolment for the business. And so once you've done that, you can then start that whole enrolment process. So luckily we've got a
Backup for
fail-safe.
those, and at least we can get into the,
Well done.
the
Exactly.
enrolment.
So we can actually take you through that process itself.
I owe you big.
Yeah.
I did say this is not our system, so this one will be a
Yeah.
little bit how good AUSTRAC has let us.
And look, let's face it, the AUSTRAC online system gets a lot of traffic. So, you may well find that at any given time that you're trying to do something within AUSTRAC online, it might take a little while. And that's pretty much understandable given the weight of the communication going through the portal.
Yeah. Now, the one thing you would not see is the first page that it would load for you to actually commence that enrolment page. I'm going back into a demo that I've used before. It will load you into AUSTRAC Online and start working you through the questionnaires. What I'm going to do is make my way back to the start, because this is completed. Apologies.
That's okay. It's still it still gives the same effect. That
Yeah.
people can see the steps that you can all see the steps that we're going through to create this AUSTRAC enrolment.
As you can see, it's a bit
process.
clunky because I can't skip back to the first one.
No.
But I will go back to the first page and we can start to step it through, and Richard can
Thanks, Mark.
guide us.
As best I can.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
and the reason we wanted to do this live was to basically talk you through some of the key areas where it is a bit of a stumbling block, because there are some sort of grey areas in some of the wording that isn't.
Specific with how a conveyancing practice works and when the designated service starts. So therefore when the risk starts.
Yeah.
And we have
yeah.
to talk that through.
Yep, absolutely. Cool.
Okay, the first page we will land on is the introduction. Richard, worthwhile having a read for our viewers.
Well, you look, I think the introductory sort of piece there, I can't actually see it, so I can't read it through for them, but I'm sure you can all see it.
A touch larger on
yeah.
the screen for at least us here in the studio.
Yeah.
We'll push through into the first section, which is where you operate.
Yep. Yeah, okay, cool. So basically, look, the idea is that some of these answers will be quite easy for you to pick. I might sort of
let's just share the screen a little bit.
so I can see where you're up to. Okay, so the the first question is pretty straightforward. This is about where you actually perform your business. So for all of the people on the Zoom today, I imagine that's going to be a pretty straightforward. Do you carry out your business in Australia? Click yes. Are you a resident of Australia and do you provide or propose to provide designated services at or through a permanent establishment in a foreign country? So that would be, look, if you do actually deliver services, conveyancing services in another country other than Australia. So that would be a no for most of you, because it wouldn't be provided under your licence. Then there's a quick question on subsidiary. So are you a part of a larger organisation? So for some that'll be yes, and for some that'll be no. And but the key part of that is we got to read through these questions pretty carefully because, again, it's a foreign country question. Yeah. So you've got to be careful about that. Thank you for highlighting that one, Mark.
That's okay. It got me the first trial run I did.
Yeah, because you sort of go yes,
yes, and move through.
Yeah, you've got to be careful of those foreign country ones. So then the next question is a remittance network provider. So for a conveyancer, that is pretty much a standard no. You may well run a remittance network business and you may need to enrol that one separately. It's highly unlikely for a conveyancer.
No, it's like you're not a remittance provider because you run a trust account.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's right.
It is more like a bank.
Directing of funds.
Remittance providers are much more, it's a specific sector of the market.
Yeah.
So it's one of those questions that really doesn't need to be here for a conveyancing business, unless you happen to be an organisation that you've got a separate remittance network. And so a remittance network is someone that is providing payment capability. Typically it's internationally for people who are wanting to send money back home overseas. So it is not just a normal transaction provider. It is a specific industry sector. Highly likely unrelevant. I can't say 100% because someone might run a separate business as well as running a conveyancing business. Today we're talking about conveyancing. So that will be a no for remittance. Yep. Okay, so...
Reporting group.
The reporting group. Now this one is more likely to be a potential yes for larger organisations. So if you have 2 or more reporting entities, so you've got 2 or more conveyancing businesses that are separate entities, you can put them together under the AML CTF framework as a reporting group. And what that would mean is that instead of having 2 different AML programs, you would just establish one AML program. You'd have one lead entity that is the one that would be responsible for developing the program. And the other entities would just join that lead entity in the reporting group. It reduces your admin burden. So if you're out there today and you've actually got more than one separate entity that is providing conveyancing services, you might want to consider becoming a reporting group because it reduces your admin and it reduces the annual compliance reporting obligation, if you like, to just one report. So
what I've showed you here is if we did happen to go down that pathway, there is a few different drop-down options that come up. And it talks about either the lead or the non-lead entity, and then obviously start to look through your structures and start to add those in. But if you are not, it's a simple no, and then we can progress to the next stage pretty comfortably.
Single entity.
Excellent.
Single entity, and we can move through.
Great.
Okay. Types of businesses.
Now
This is the one that wouldn't be here. Now I know it's showing up, but this is where Jenny ran into it, and business and professional services. Then
because I originally looked at property, real estate, legal services, conveyancer. No.
Yeah, and so it is. You do need to know that first step.
It is the business and professional services that you're probably seeing right now if you're working through this, and when you click that, the additional options drop down, which confused a lot of people because it wasn't there to begin with. Because we're going back into my backup account because the first one didn't work. We've got this already pre-completed to a degree.
Which is great, but it is important that everybody be aware that you want that second item in that first question, business and professional services. So that covers the designated services provided under Section 6, Table 6. Within the AML CTF Act. So business and professional services, click that and then you get your subcategory and that makes it a whole lot easier. But it's that first question that's a real stumper for a lot, I've had a lot of calls from people and a lot of conversations with people about how to do this, and it's generally because they don't see conveyancing in that first section.
Yeah. I think professional services, that's a good definition, and that's what we can
It
take
is.
some
Yeah.
solace in, that's gone under that bracket, so to speak.
Hopefully we'll all figure that out eventually
Yeah.
as we go through it.
Okay.
Yep, cool. Next.
Pushing through into the designated services.
Yeah.
Now, talking about virtual asset services and whatnot, I think that the common theme we've found is no one really is doing it at the moment, but Richard,
Yeah.
if it does come up?
No, look, you're not, I mean, essentially this is for digital currency exchange providers and people that accept digital currencies. That's this category. So look, for a conveyancing firm, you can, I mean, as you read through those key points in there, it does kind of lead you to the logical conclusion that if you're a standard conveyancing business and you don't take digital currency, then it's going to be a no.
And then we go back into this remittance services, and
Yes,
I think this is one where it has picked up a few people because we does start to go and define it a bit more with directing funds and with trust accounts and settlements. Is there a draw in? So I think we answered that before, Richard, which is conveyancers, with a caveat that if you run a separate business, obviously, you might fall under that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, generally speaking, this is about trying to identify the designated services that you are going to be providing, and that will then flow into your risk assessment and your policies and procedures. So again, moving through those, you're not a remittance provider as a general rule.
Okay. And now is the main designated services, which for most of our conveyancers will be a single tick option.
Correct.
Richard, I'll let you go into more detail if there is any. I guess there might be some property lawyers out there that
Look,
can
there
overlap.
might be. I mean, look, we've focused on gathering the conveyancing industry today, so we will stick with that conveyancing focus. There are other options here, and you may be running a legal business that does conveyancing as well, and so you may be able to look through that and tick more boxes.
Yep, perfect.
But for
I
now,
suppose for them, they have to look at whether the other areas of law that they practice fall under tranche 2.
that's a really good point.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's right. Because so the way the Act works is that it's focused on the designated service provided rather than the industry sector that you're in. So just because you're running a law firm doesn't mean you're a reporting entity. Pardon me, it hinges around those designated services, and they are listed in that table 6 in section 6 of the Act, and there's 9 items in there that are the designated services. So I would refer the viewers back to that table to review and assess whether or not your law firm provides an actual designated services. Some, like family law focused services firms, may not, but then again they may.
They may if it
Well,
overlaps with property and transactions.
if they do the conveyancing part of family
that
law,
falls into it.
then they do.
Correct.
But if it's just family law, no.
Well, there are parts of family law that can trigger designated
Yes.
services
Yeah,
as
the
well.
Okay.
different
outside
structure
Possibly.
setups and advisory work.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Right, we're getting the
Okay,
wrap up. We
we're
need to
getting
move
to
along.
speed.
Yeah, sorry everybody.
It does prompt you to ask about a commencement date for everybody's 1 July existing businesses at this time.
Yeah, this is true. So this means that I guess the date that you become a reporting entity is the first day, as of the 1st of July, that you provide a designated service. So for most of you out there, if you've got continuing business, it'll be the 1st of July.
Okay, once you've done, I guess, the nuts and bolts of the designated service, we then need to go through and enter your business details and structures and owners of. I've going with some demo data here as much as we
Great.
possibly can. A lot of this will be dependent on, I guess, your individual firm setups
Absolutely.
and whether you are an incorporated body
Company
corporate, a
or
company, you
Yeah.
run a
sole
sole trader,
trader.
trading as a particular business name. For the time being, we have just gone through and just put some demo data in there. If you do have an ABN, we would be filling that out, the same with ACN and any other applicable details.
Registration numbers,
I've obviously moving through here with a body corporate at the moment.
And I think we can move through these pieces pretty quickly.
Pretty quick, 'cause
It's
this
pretty
is-
straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's their setup, and
Yeah.
really, it's about finding your business names and adding it all in, and following the steps.
Actually, pretty much through there. I mean, the only things that you need to know is that you need those registration numbers on hand.
Yes.
So, if you don't have it right now, you can go open up another web page and do ABN lookup
Yeah.
and type in the name of your business and you'll get your ABN. Those sorts of things you can be able to get pretty quickly.
Yeah. Again, moving through this in a body corporate fashion, one of the reasons I did that is it starts to talk about directors and then I guess
Right.
ultimate beneficial owners of a business, which might flow nicely into our CDD later, customer due diligence a little bit later. I put my own details in, not my birth date. If anybody wants to know that, I'm
Yeah,
happy to
that's
share
right.
it and
Yeah.
send gifts, but not on the 1st.
Right.
I would love to have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. So I think the important thing there, if you're putting in directors of your organisation, there is a director identification number.
Yes, there is.
Slot in there, so you need to pop
Correct.
that in too. So that's something you get from ASIC, and you can.
Which I think is mandatory for all directors now, so they should hold it. Yeah,
it is these days.
So there's options to add additional directors that are needed, and also there'll be an option which is good. And is there an ultimate holding company for those?
Yeah, again,
structures?
if you've got, it depends. If you've got a more complex structure than just a single proprietary limited company, there's pretty logical steps to go through to get that right. So I think that bit's pretty evident.
And if you have that set up, you probably know about it before you start.
Let's hope so. If you don't know about it, ask your accountant, perhaps.
Yeah. Then it moves into the beneficial owners of the entity of your firm and the ownership structure of that firm. Can easily add them in as you go. Add additional beneficial owners, put their details in, and just nominating who is associated with the business at this point. Contact details, that is actually triSearch's old, no, it's not Newtown, but old address, so we moved this week, which was lovely. Nice. Beautiful new office that you have to come and check out, Jenny. And we just spoke to you too, Richard, you're definitely invited. Moving through, entering the details as you would for your business where it trades. There is a website option if you do. Is this a necessary step, Richard, to your knowledge?
Look, I mean, they like to have this filled in as well, so that they can get a sense of the business being real and having some, some sort of.
They are doing their checks in the background.
Yeah, they are.
So if I submitted this, it might be a bit curious that triSearch is not a conveyancing practice.
I think that's right. If it's not on the website, it might be an issue. So yeah, it's worthwhile filling that in as well. They'd prefer that. Okay. Pretty straightforward questions here about the the full-time employees that you've got in there.
I'm sure we'd all like to increase the number, and that could be the plan downstream. And definitely with this obligations coming on, we hope to.
It also depends on that.
There's a contentious issue around that.
So, sorry, not too high. We don't want to.
Yeah, that's right. So I think the key thing to know here, the reason that they're looking for this is to get a sense of the size of the organisations that are enrolling as well. So look, it's an estimate, and it's not one that needs to be deadly accurate, but they give you some pretty broad,
big brackets.
Pretty big brackets. So just pick one of those.
Okay. Then we move into nominating an AML.
Yeah, this is the important bit. So generally, if you're a one-person operation, that'll be you. You'll be the AML compliance officer. If you've got more than one person employed in the business, you've got a choice, obviously. But the person nominated here has to be considered fit and proper for the role, and there is details about what that means and what you need to do in terms of personnel due diligence around that as well. So we'll go through that as we're going through the build out of your program. Okay. So nominating that person, putting them in there, they will be the key point of communication for AUSTRAC as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can tick through there.
We don't have to worry about this one. Let's just not talk about industry levy.
Yeah, the industry levy point there. So I guess the benchmark profitability is at the moment $100 million, and above that, the government considers placing a levy on a business. That's a decision for the Minister of Home Affairs usually as to what level of levy is applied. There's a formula for it. It's for larger organisations at the moment in tranche 1, over $100 million in profit per annum. So let's move on from that.
Then we move into a summary and review. So everything that you've completed to go through and just monitor, make sure you haven't accidentally clicked the wrong button, typed the wrong details in. I think it's pretty crucial because you might have spent some time doing this.
It's worthwhile reading through that and making sure that it is actually reflecting the right details, because you might have done a fat finger on something or other and put in the wrong data point. So do check it. Don't just click straight through.
It'll save you having to go back and do any corrections later down the track.
And I think the button down the bottom right-hand corner that Mark showed just there is a save for later option as well. Correct. So, if you're not quite sure about some of the details, just save for later and come back in later on.
And this is a step I won't complete on the system right now, which is the final declaration and submitting your forms, your enrolment is a better word. Complete it, be comfortable with what you're declaring to, obviously, and submit across.
Yep.
Great.
Jenny, that post this, it took how long roughly for you to receive it?
Less than a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you go back into the compliance centre and load the number, your
then you're able to load
enrolment number.
Yeah, and you can bring that in there.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the AUSTRAC enrolment piece.
Pretty much, yeah.
We've got some good questions coming through.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, excellent.
A quick look at those.
So there's, do my staff also need to register with AUSTRAC, or is it just me as the business owner? So go.
Yeah, just the business owner.
Just the business
yeah,
owner.
that's right.
Which staff are required to do the police checks?
Yeah, that's a good question too. That's the compliance officer. So the level of personnel due diligence that you do across your whole business is driven by the AML program that we will build through the Compliance Centre. As a general rule, doing something deep like a police check is something that you'd probably focus just on your compliance officer. If you've got a separate senior manager, you'd possibly do that on that person as well. And if you've got a separate governing body, you may well do that on the governing body as well. Your general staff, your client-facing staff, your day-to-day staff, a police check is optional. So it comes back to really managing the money laundering risk, thinking about the role, the specific role, and then conducting personnel due diligence that fits for that level of risk in that role. So
my sort of thought on that was, I mean, I've got staff, I've got great staff. I did like a bankruptcy search because I had to do that for myself. Most of my conveyancing members are all roles.
bankrupt.
So it will just be there. But I suppose I'm, conveyancers are risk minimisers.
Yes.
So I just covered everything off just purely because I wanted to show that I've done everything right. You know, it probably, but that's good to know because I didn't know it was just me as the compliance officer.
Yeah, it's about that fit and proper test, and the Act is very specific about what should be considered in order to assess whether the compliance officer is a fit and proper person for the role.
Okay.
With regard to everyone else, it's about your policy, and it's about actually doing role-specific MLTF risk assessments. Of that role, and then you consider, so for someone to do this role, we should be doing this sort of due diligence on that
So the
person.
onboarding staff don't need to have that kind of check
The
level.
onboarding stuff, do you mean like the
Client-facing
Client-facing
staff, I believe.
Yeah, not as a general rule. So again, it comes back to, and we'll go through this in the build of the program, because the personnel policy is where you would define who we're going to run due diligence on and at what level. So for a lot of your staff, it'll just be about verifying their identity, make sure that you actually know who they are, and then the other step would be understanding whether or not there's any substantial issues like are they actually, or have they recently been a politically exposed person, because that increases the risk of bribery and corruption. Are they sanctioned by a relevant local or global sanctioning entity? And have they been, is there adverse media about them? So have they been, charged, convicted or accused of a predicate crime for profit that would mean that any of the money that they're dealing with could possibly be illicit funds?
Okay. Are we expected to do AML check on clients who are already a client, we're already acting for them, we're not settling till after 1 July? Or is it just for transactions that we take on after 1 July?
It's a great question. It's not so much about AUSTRAC enrolment though. We're sort of getting back.
I think
we'll
we definitely have that one coming up for a little bit later in the piece.
If you offer services, for example, business sales, does that fall under designated service?
Yeah, that business sales are definitely part of what would be considered a designated service. Again, when you look at business sales, you'll be able to look up on that table 6 in section 6 of the Act and see which item of the 9 items applies and which one to select. But if you're a conveyancer and you do business sales, then you've got a foot in each camp.
And just for clarity, there, conveyancers do business sales as well as lawyers. So depending on whether you define yourself as a conveyancer or a lawyer in that
You'd
section.
Probably start with a conveyancer, but you'd then maybe add designated services to your AML program. It's about then assessing the risk of that particular designated service versus the straightforward property conveyancing. Yeah,
and law firm, that does conveyancing, you're still referring yourself as a solicitor, law firm, not a conveyancer. So just some basic stuff there. Once enrolled with AUSTRAC, are you able to make changes to it if your designated services or other details change?
Yes. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you can update your enrolment with AUSTRAC, much the same as you can update your AML program. And of course, you want to keep a record of any of these updates that you do, either with AUSTRAC or in your program. The ones with AUSTRAC online, you want to keep a record of that with your records of your program.
Yeah,
and I
fantastic.
think post this submission, you'll be able to log into your AUSTRAC online account for this particular business, and that's where you'll find a lot of options to start to edit it, which I can't really show at the moment because we didn't submit the the request. Yeah.
If I put my start date of my business as the date I actually started my business, not 1 July 2026, will that matter?
Yeah, I think from memory what the question says is it says, when did you commence to be a reporting entity?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's 1 July.
And that is 1 July of this year. So you want to, you do want to get that right.
I'll get back there, but it might be a bit to find.
Yeah, you do a bit of, if you can, Mark, keep dancing in there because it'd be good to actually show the wording of that question. Because really I think what they're looking for is to understand whether or not you've breached your obligation to enrol 28 days, within 28 days of becoming a reporting entity. So if you actually filled out a question about when did you become a reporting entity and you posted it sort of for 2 or 3 years ago, then if you're only now enrolling, you're in breach of that 28 days.
Yeah.
And so that would not be a good thing because you can get an infringement notice for that.
So it's indicate when you commenced or expect to commence providing the selected designated services, and that doesn't really exist until 1 July
As a conveyancer.
As a conveyancer, yeah.
So make sure that is 1 July 2026 because as I say, that you've only got 28 days post the provision of a designated service, the first time you provide that service, to enrol with AUSTRAC.
Okay.
Good question. I'm glad,
Yeah,
I'm glad
great
someone
question.
actually asked that.
Yeah. Okay, what about real estate services? Non-brokered or brokered?
Well, they're actually in a separate table that we haven't been focusing on. So the real estate services are in table 5 and there's only 2 items in there. So those designated services are in the AUSTRAC enrolment process as well, so you can nominate those too.
I think that
that's
just
about the
time-wise,
last
so we
question,
don't
Jenny.
go too far over it. I think we've got the
No,
clock here.
one question to go.
One more,
We've
Jenny.
got an important one.
What happens if we miss the 1 July AUSTRAC enrolment
Don't
deadline?
panic.
Are there penalties or is there a grace period?
Okay, so yes, there is a grace period built in. So you don't have to enrol before the 1st of July. You have, the 1st of July is when you become a reporting entity and you have 28 days past that to effectively enrol with AUSTRAC. So you have until the 29th of July, so midnight on the 28th of July you want to be enrolled by. That's your deadline.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good question.
Cool.
I think it was very important to us. Got in there
good
just
ones.
before we closed off. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
We're going to take a brief break at the moment. What I just want to remind you quickly, got on the screen, if you haven't got access to this compliance centre, try to get your request off to our support team as quick as you can. They should give them some time to get it going. So when we do come back, we're going to move into the compliance centre.
Right, well look, we're going to take you through now in this 4th segment. It's going to run for about 35 minutes. So we're going to talk to the various different roles that you need to establish in your compliance centre, in your AML program. So it'll be a little bit of a focus across the roles, governance and oversight, and also staff onboarding and personnel due diligence. That's what we want to cover in the next 35 minutes. So bear with us as we go to the compliance centre. So Mark's going to take us through this step by step, looking at, basically who needs a compliance officer, what that role requires, a little bit of that, we'll cover that off as well as we go through board and senior management obligations, a little bit about those as we're talking through this too, and then digging into that personnel due diligence piece that we touched on just before the break as well. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, just to revert back, we are working within some demo environments right now. I'll do my best and I hope the system does its best to move things smoothly. If not, we do have some backups and I just appreciate everyone sort of bears with us as we work through our steps.
Absolutely.
Again, we're going to access the Compliance Centre through the tab across the top. Hopefully, if you are following along, support was able to get you guys sorted, or at least a firm owner with some access here. This is what we like to talk about being the initial setup of the Compliance Centre.
Yep. That's right. So we're just establishing, I guess, the entity itself and the key roles that you need to call out through here. This one's a little bit easier than the AUSTRAC online site.
I think we tried to make it as
a little bit
user-friendly as
it's
possible.
very user-friendly.
Yeah.
It's just the area specific to
tranche two,
Yeah.
where you get it gets a little
bit tricky.
Little bit tricky.
Well, let's go through this. So the first thing you're going to do, obviously, is to select the sector. So for conveyancing, that we're focusing on today, that's pretty straightforward. So you select that from the drop-down box. Thanks, Mark.
And I guess on a system-wise, this is filtering through a lot of the stuff that you might not need to see from the digitised packs that we've put on here in relation to other areas as well. So it makes it a little bit easier to navigate. I know it still has the complexities.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that we do get questions about, because when you look at the AUSTRAC starter kits that Grant Thornton worked with AUSTRAC on, those starter kits have a lot more bulk to them. So if you were to go onto the AUSTRAC website, download the starter kit, you see pages and pages and pages. What we've done to digitise that starter kit here reduces the amount of questions that you've got to go through that are irrelevant to your specifics, if you like. So this is actually, this does contain all the essential elements. It is a compliant program that you're building now. I think that's a really important point. So we choose conveyancing, we then drop down into assigning roles. Now the assigning of roles is an interesting one as well, because there are multiple roles, but if you're a one-person operation, that's fine. You can just basically nominate yourself.
Wear every hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of conveyancers do wear every hat. We understand that. So that's essentially, it's anticipated by AUSTRAC. They won't get upset by this when you've got an AML program that has one name in every one of these governing bodies, senior manager and compliance officer roles. The key thing, though, is that you do need to remember that you will need to operate as though you were some of the different roles, if you like. So compliance officer has day-to-day operational activity responsibility for the AML program. The senior manager signs off on things that are unusual, so high-risk situations. So if you were to have a high-risk client that needs acknowledgement and sign-off and specific steps to be taken, you'd need to sign those off as senior manager. So it is important that you understand what role you're performing at which time, if you are putting yourself in as all three roles.
Yeah, okay. Just on the operational side, we know there are some user issues with some businesses that could have duplicates, could have some old data and old users on there. Our support's there definitely to help you guys clean this up. But at this first step, what I'd really recommend is, and you can see with our demo account, we've got a whole bunch of staff, employees and ex-employees. We've added a little filter where it is going to highlight the particular account that you're in and you're using to set this up. It's really important that you use this particular user, otherwise when you push through this stage you might actually lose functionality. So some people have been doing this in a duplicate account, one that their tri-convey does not connect them into. So look for the U. If it is not there, I really have to get you to reach back out to support and get the guys to help you through this. They've been doing it for months right now. They're getting very, very good at it. There are some ways to control the user settings. I really just, with the tri-convey connections, if you are an integrated user, I prefer that you go through to support and they can direct you the best way on how to clean those up at least and remove old users as well. Okay. I'm going to just include myself as all. As Richard did mention, there could be multiple compliance officers to a degree.
Yeah, so I think this is an important one to touch on too. As far as AUSTRAC is concerned, there is only one AML compliance officer within your business. So that is the person that's nominated in AUSTRAC Online. However, when you come to using the Compliance Centre, you can nominate multiple compliance officers in the Compliance Centre. It doesn't mean that they're all listed with AUSTRAC as the compliance officer. It just means that they're enabled as a user. So they can be a delegate of the compliance officer. That is pretty handy if you've got more than one person in your firm. You may want to take a holiday occasionally. So you may still need someone to run the Compliance Centre processes. So while you're away, you'll need a delegate compliance officer. You can put those in as additional compliance officers in the Compliance Centre. So I think that's important to understand. There's a difference between enrolling a compliance officer with AUSTRAC, that's just one person, and then enrolling multiple compliance officers within the Compliance Centre to enable the flow of business.
Yeah, to give you more permissions on that system to do steps.
And so when you come back from holidays, do you update?
No, you don't need to in the Compliance Centre. No,
okay, you just have the two there.
Yeah, that's right. Or three.
If you did want to update for any change, there is some options. We'll get to that with the staff onboarding and where you can control these particular permissions at a later date as well.
So you can bounce someone off.
You can bounce them off.
Back on again.
Yes. In the
if
event
you don't
that
want them having ongoing access, generally speaking, for the larger firms, you may well end up with a team of people in compliance. And so that's what this specific capability is for. So I can put in 3 or 4 members of the compliance team who can all go in and run the AML CTF program or parts thereof for me on my behalf as the compliance officer. And that's a very common thing to have happen in larger organisations that have been doing this since 2006.
Okay, and the last setup that you need before you can actually launch this compliance centre, you don't actually need, is the optional of entering your AUSTRAC number. We saw before the break that there is an option to add this later. So if you do have it, you can insert it now and it will save. If you do not, you can push through this step. Once you click save, you will land very comfortably back on the screen that we saw before.
So this is your dashboard.
This is the dashboard. At the moment, you will see this is our demo account. A lot of our account managers have been working very, very hard doing a lot of demos with as many clients as we possibly can reach. So there is some data that flows in on your systems. This will not go live and functioning until 1 July when the obligations do arise. So don't be alarmed if you don't see any transactions landing in this particular stage. I guess we can push on now into the first real step in the compliance centre.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is our firm risk assessment, and we can go through some pretty hard-hitting questions on the designated services.
Well, what you might do is some of the staff onboarding. What do you think?
Okay.
Maybe,
Well, I wanted to ask some questions about that. to be
staff
honest.
onboarding.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's do that because that's what we wanted to do in this segment.
Okay,
Was
apologies.
really no, it's cool.
Yeah.
I know it's the logical way to go through this.
The logical flow.
is,
Apologies. I've gone back into the hundreds of demos I've done
Yeah,
before.
that's exactly right. So when we're demoing this, we build you through the program. What we wanted to do today, though, was demonstrate the staff onboarding and the personnel due diligence piece, and talk you through some of that in this first segment.
Apologies.
And then that's cool.
No, because I
doesn't really
think
matter what we do.
for smaller firms, whether they're conveyancers, law firms, they'll have staff who are the client onboarding facing people, and it is then the senior. They report that check that they've done to the senior manager to sign off on, or
only if they're high risk. So So it's those high risk clients. So maybe we should go through that.
We'll go through the onboarding process and we can
Yeah.
see the different roles. So if you do navigate yourself across to the staff onboarding tab,
Click on that.
click on that there on a system side here. If you are not seeing the particular users that you're expecting to see in this system, I recommend reaching out to support. They will assist you with this. There are some nuanced details around the triconvey and triSearch integration and when users are created. Again, I just would push you back to support. They know what they're doing in this instance. Otherwise, you should see a list of users that will flow in.
So this automatically gets filled with people who are part of your
team.
Automatically is the ideal situation,
Okay.
and the way that triconvey has at least been operating recently, it will, so long as your user has accessed the triSearch integration through their triconvey, that will create them as a separate user in the system. That will limit them to a user only. They won't have firm admin roles. If they are to be a compliance officer, that particular person, we may need support to assist with that process. But it will automatically populate, and if it is not, then I recommend support to help you populate this list.
Okay. So even if it does populate, it won't actually allocate the roles to them under the AML program.
Correct. You won't see this. This is because, again, we have run hundreds of demos and these different users have had their roles changed. You should be looking at, and I don't think we have an empty one, if I was to remove the last particular role, and we can talk about what I just did a little bit later in the process, you should see their name and they will have no role assigned to them other than your own user. Okay. Then we would navigate to the onboarding process.
Gotcha. So we're going to onboard Lauren into this organisation.
Okay. On the system-wise, if there are details missing, they will need to be updated, and that can again be done, I'd recommend through support, but there is a settings tab for the firm owners. They can go through their users and complete some details. For assigning roles, so this is, I guess, after the fact, if we wanted to change this, Richard.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would
so
come
for this one, you've got the classics of governing body. Now that's going to be the directors of the business, generally speaking. So depending on, we call it the governing body, or AUSTRAC decided to call it the governing body, so as to cater for the different types of businesses like partnerships, sole traders, etc., etc. Traditionally, it's just been referred to as the directors of the business. So the governing body are the most senior parts of the organisation. Again, it can be the one person, show that would be the governing body as well. And you can select multiple roles in the compliance centre that are appropriate for your position, if you like. So, what we're doing here, Mark, is we're basically saying that we've got one person, Lauren, who does everything. I'm sure she feels that way sometimes too. So if you select all of those, then what that will do is populate the I guess, show you some of the required steps based on your personnel policy, which we will get to later.
This comes back to my original question.
Yeah.
So you've marked her as doing everything,
Yeah.
including client facing.
Yeah.
But because if you go the criminal history check, the bankruptcy
Yeah.
register search,
Yeah.
that's only going to apply to those that are the governing body,
Senior manager,
AML,
compliance
and
officer.
compliance officer.
Yeah.
So you're not required for the onboarding.
Yeah, I mean,
client
the key
facing,
point
sorry.
is, you've got the Act and the rules and the guidance to go by. So the full requirement is for the fit and proper tests for the compliance officer. However, every entity builds their own AML program, their own AML program, and in that program there's a personnel policy. So if you wanted to make it your policy, Jenny, in your business, that everybody needs the full bankruptcy checks, police checks, litigation checks, everything, that's up to you. You can make that decision and you can build that into your personnel policy if you want to. As far as the AML CTF regime is concerned, the focus is really on the compliance officer. There's an assumption that the senior manager and the governing body would also go through more complete due diligence as well because of their position. So for a one-person band, the compliance officer, you automatically need to run those checks effectively on yourself and record them in your program. So if you've got then all other staff members, it is up to you as to how deep you want to go in your due diligence, what you think is acceptable for your business.
Okay.
So other than that, you do just do verification of identity and AML CTF watchlist screening.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. So if I did, as we were speaking there, I did
Yeah.
change some roles and pulled away the governing bodies and that role when you do land on client facing, it is the restricted options, so
The
to
reduced
speak.
Reduced options.
Reduced options is a better word. With the VOI, the verification of identity, the politically exposed person, sanctions and adverse media check that can run.
Yeah.
It's a very simple order process. Press the order. I think a lot of people have at least seen or used the VOI. At this point, for those that don't, the staff going through the process in this has actually been helpful for some of the clients I work with because they got to see what their clients are actually doing on the VOI side on the back end, which has helped a little bit on the operational side and talking their clients through some issues they're having. There's options to insert some license or details if they want to store it on the system.
Suitability check.
There's a suitability checklist. Is this
Yeah.
a requirement on at least the compliance officer to confirm they're happy with their staff member doing the work? Is it?
Well, yes. Quite frankly, yes. So the idea is that the suitability. That's okay. So the suitability is essentially just to get you to think about. Okay, so this person is dealing with my clients. They have the opportunity to be persuaded, perhaps either consciously or subconsciously, to do something to manage or to handle illicit funds. So it just prompts you to think about it. Okay, so what have I done to test my thinking around the employment of this person in my business from the money laundering and terrorism financing risk perspective?
Okay.
So it is a good thing to go through and just consider it and then decide, okay, is that person suitable for a client-facing role?
Okay, and then the last is optional if you need to upload a statutory declaration for a name, potential name differences. Is that what we're thinking?
It is. It's around things like the verification of identity, stat dec. It might be around a matter that might have come up through the screening process. You might ask the person to verify that yes, this matter is old, it's been resolved. Here's an explanation of it might be around bankruptcy or some litigation.
So that's for them to be able to look at when they're doing a client VOI check, that they can look at documents like a change of name due to marriage or...
Well, this is more for personnel.
Yeah.
So this is for personnel?
Yeah, this is
okay.
personnel. Yeah, this is personnel.
Yeah.
So if you run a screen that you may not have run on, when you employ a person, you might just look at their CV and go, oh yeah, that looks good. You might look at them on LinkedIn or something and say, oh, that looks roughly like the CV that I've seen here. That may be all you do when you hire someone. If you're hiring them, in the future, into a client-facing role under the AML CTF regime, you need to do a little more than just taking it at their CV word, right?
Yeah.
So you might find something in that screening process that causes you to consider the money laundering risk of hiring that person into a client-facing role. You may have a conversation with them about it. It may get resolved, and you might just want a little bit of an audit trail around that issue that came up through your screening as to the reason why you're putting that to one side and accepting the risk of hiring that person. It may need a statutory declaration from the person that says that piece of litigation has been resolved in this way, it's now over and done with, So you might ask them for a stat deck. It's not essential. It's again comes down to the business owner as to
Okay.
what you might want verification of. So we've built that into the Compliance Centre as an extra.
Okay.
Okay. What I want to talk to now, maybe a little bit more about the order in which things are supposed to be done on this system, because it has been confusing with a bunch of staff being onboarded, but then no one could actually complete the onboarding steps. And I know we've got it from a technical side on the system, and Richard as well. But the way we best describe this from our point of view is that a governing body, a firm owner, is required to onboard the compliance officer if they're not one and the same. So that status or that role is needed
To be assigned.
to actually to be assigned and done. And if it's not there, again, I push you back to support. They can assist you with these steps.
Yeah.
And it would be that the compliance officer, if they are one and the same, would onboard themselves first and foremost, complete all the steps that are needed, and I can't push through this because we will have
It'll
the VOI,
drive a whole lot of,
the VOI
Yeah.
flowing back on
Yeah.
back through.
Yep.
But effectively, you would come back and your VOI and your politically exposed person, sanctions, and adverse media check would be resulted in there. You'd add it all, and you'd come to a point where you'd be able to onboard that particular person. So on an operational side, firm owners must, or governing bodies, firm owners.
Governing body first.
Yep, governing body
governing
first
body first.
themselves.
Yep.
Then they go through and do the compliance officer if it's someone different, or themselves they've already done.
Yep.
And then once that's done, the compliance officer alone is onboarding the remainder of the team.
That's right.
Client-facing staff members.
Yep.
So from an operational point of view, I know some people have currently run into some steps of we've got it all done, but we can't actually complete the final steps on that system.
Good reminder,
So
because
that order button is onboarding them.
That's sending. So what that will do when we trigger that is send the VOI to the particular nominated email.
Yeah.
That staff member will receive the VOI
Yeah.
link, and they can commence the VOI process for
Yeah.
verification of identity process for those that don't like acronyms.
Yeah.
And the mobile number is going to be used to send a second or two-factor authentication code to make sure it's actually the same person who accessed the link that is doing that VOI
Check in.
check as well.
Okay, got it. And then if you check and you're happy with it, they will then be shown as they're on board.
Yeah, so the same process as if you were doing a client. Once they do complete it, it reverts back to the compliance centre to have it reviewed and accepted
Yeah.
from the governing body who's onboarding the compliance officer and themselves, and then the compliance officer doing it for the staff. So that review process will still be there. If there's issues with identification documents, you can do the request, re-upload and follow that normal process. Once it is all completed, it will land back into the particular staff that you have been working on as a completed check. As will the PEP sanctions and adverse media check will return back. And
The results.
The results of. And I don't know if this might be a time for a question, Richard, but I've had this come up with a handful of clients where they have had some triggers, and whether these be accurate or inaccurate triggers.
Good question. So the way that PEP's sanctions and adverse media screening works is that it's a link into a database that's generated globally at the moment by the Dow Jones organisation, and they've been doing that for well over 20 years now. So what they're doing is they're putting together lists of names who are politically exposed people all around the world, likewise sanctions lists, and then adverse media, scraping basically all of the adverse media around the world and assigning it to individual names. What they then do is take the name that you put into that system, they screen it against that database, and they find the same name. Now, ideally, there are things like date of birth, country of residence that will help narrow down that field. But at the end of the day, if you've got a common name like a John Smith or a Jane Smith, you might end up with more than one result in that PEP sanctions and adverse media screening. It might be 10, 12. If it's a particularly common name, it might be more than that, who come up as a possible match. You've then got to actually resolve that. You've then got to decide, okay, is this my Jane Smith? And so you can do that by going through and usually looking at the results and saying, okay, well, Jane Smith in Ohio in the United States of America isn't the one who works for me in Cronulla. So you can go through and then select the one who is the exact match.
Okay.
And that's an important part. So they're not incorrect results. They're correct, but they're not relevant to you. So for your purposes, they're what we call a false positive match.
Okay.
So
I think it's good because that's been a bit of an additional feature that's come on to really kind of work through these results that are running back in.
Yeah, and look, hopefully things like the date of birth and the country of residence, those two things hopefully will clear out a lot of those false positives right up front. But you might end up with a few, you just need to resolve that.
Okay. As we can't actually demonstrate too much in our demo account, but as these steps are being completed, there is a monitoring row here that will update with whether they're in progress or completed. And if for any reason you come back in here and something has changed, there might be some action items to address.
To go through, yep.
And update. With the onboarding, there is also some other views on the training, which we'll talk about a little bit later on.
Yeah, that's right.
In the process. In terms of a system, that is end-to-end of the staff onboarding and how it would look.
It's pretty quick, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Probably the slowest thing is going to be if you get a lot of false positives.
Yeah, on that PEP
On
sanctions.
that PEP sanctions and adverse media screening. That's probably what's going to slow you down the most.
And I'll remind you just with the users, we're expecting people to land and need a bit of a clean up. Lean on our support team. They're awesome. They are.
So one of the questions that's come in, it also applies to me. If you have staff that don't work in Australia, that are offshore workers,
Yeah.
VOI, how is that done if it's not an Australian number?
Okay. I'll talk to the system side of things.
Yeah,
I'll
please.
leave the rest to Richard on anything
the way
else that
it
needs to be
works,
needs to be brought into it. We are aware and more aware now of some particular issues or dead zones with the 2FA text message that goes to
Yeah.
confirm the
A lot in
individual.
Southeast Asia.
Yes.
There's a
where
lot of countries in Southeast Asia that block those.
I believe
Yeah.
the Philippines is one
Yep.
that's spoken about. There are some
There's quite
other
a few.
areas.
Yep,
Yeah.
there is quite a few.
The at least suggested workarounds from the system perspective that we have at the moment is if you are onboarding your staff, you know who they are, you can deal with them, is that you nominate your own or an Australian-based mobile number. Ideally, or the process we're talking about is yourself, you're comfortable with the person you're dealing with, jump on a team session with them, make sure they are the one clicking that link to complete their VOI, and provide that 2FA code with them live on the screen, so you know it's the right person completing that verification step.
So
That's
it is
the
a little
system.
bit manual.
A little bit manual on that side. The dead zones, I won't speak to the reasons why or
No,
the
let's not.
politics around that. But yes, there are some restrictions that we have managed to successfully onboard with other clients, some people from these different regions using that process.
Yeah.
That's the technical side.
Yeah, well, I think it's worthwhile just making sure that everybody who's on the Zoom understands that process. If there are a few that have got offshore workers,
Yeah, okay.
because there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, really, when you're onboarding your personnel, you really just need to have reasonable grounds that you actually believe that person is who they say they are. That's what that's really all about.
Yes.
And so it's establishing their identity very clearly and being able to record the way that you establish their identity. So that's what's important in terms of your AML program.
So some firms will have people perform different sections of a conveyancing transaction. So the conveyancer will do the beginning, legal sign-off, exchange of contracts. They'll have someone do post-exchange work, client onboarding, all of those checks.
Yep.
It will then be given to someone else to settle.
Okay.
They won't do client onboarding. It'll be done by the second person. Do they still, the people who just do settlement, they're still providing a designated service for the firm, aren't they?
They really
So
are,
they
yeah.
would need to still be onboarded.
Yes, they would.
Yep, thank you.
So do you want to?
Okay. I will just
steps?
go. Yeah, I'll go through these steps.
Do we have time for that? Yeah.
I think there is a little bit of time, and then we
Yep,
can dive
good.
into some more detailed questions as well. If you are needing to, there is a little pen that would sit next to the particular staff member that you're working within. I'll go back just to make sure we all know where we're going with this. You'll land with your staff onboarding page. You will go in to onboard that particular staff member. Their mobile number may or may not be there depending on how the users are set up. This is where you would trigger an Australian mobile number is the recommended process, and ideally possibly your own if you're the compliance officer and or governing body. And that will make sure that when you click save and order that VOI, the email link will still go to your staff member. They will receive it to commence that onboarding, that VOI process. But when they go to commence it, it requires a 2FA code be put in. When they trigger that, it will send a text message to that Australian mobile number, and that's where the recommendation is you would reach out to that particular person you're comfortable and you know that they are the person doing the check, and you would then provide that code that you received on their behalf.
And you can only send that as an SMS.
The 2FA is
The way it works,
the way a 2FA
You
is
can't do it
working.
through WhatsApp.
No, well, effectively the WhatsApp is driven by the number. And so
Yeah.
it's the number and the way that process works that is blocked by telcos
Yeah.
in these offshore, other countries, I
Yeah.
should say. And this is common to verification of identity systems
For clients.
right around the world.
Yeah, and we'll get to that when
Yeah,
we're talking
yeah.
about clients because
Yeah,
that's a
'cause that's another issue.
very common thing as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the way that you could manage this is if you put your mobile number in, you could FaceTime your staff member when they're ready to do the VOI with you, and you could say, "Rightio, I've got the code here." You can see that it's them. they've logged in via their email link, and they just need to put in the code that's popped up on your screen, on your mobile.
Yeah. And
So-
you'll be using that safe mobile number you've used for that staff member for a long time when you call them on the FaceTime.
Yeah.
So there is a link to the 2FA still
Yeah.
legally being in place and
Well, I'm not going to make a legal opinion. I think it's important to note that none of what we're talking about today is specific
true.
legal advice. It's general advice in nature, and for legal advice you need to really go and get your own. So I think that's important to make that distinction.
Apologies.
No, that's cool. No, it's okay. It's just one of those things that we don't want people thinking this is legal advice. What we're talking about here is dealing with personnel onboarding. When you've got personnel in a country wherein the telcos block the multi-factor authentication process out of Australia.
I think it's an important note is it's a common issue found across a lot of 2FA systems.
Yes. We use a variety, or we have, I've got clients for the last 20 years who use a variety of different VOI, as it's called in the conveyancing world. We call it IDV. It's the same thing. And basically a lot of them, if not all of them, have these issues with certain countries. Cool. Okay. So I think we've really given that a good run through. Just checking for time. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes for this
We've got some
segment.
questions rolling in there,
there's
Jenny.
a lot of questions I think we've already answered.
Good.
Who onboards the compliance officer?
Yeah, we did answer that one, but it is a good one. It's
Yeah.
the governing body.
Yeah.
So if you're all 3 roles, you do yourself as a governing body first, and then you can enrol yourself as a compliance officer or the compliance officer.
And the governing body doesn't need someone to onboard the governing body.
No, apparently not.
Okay.
The governing body is the one that controls. So think about the concept of where the governing body comes from. It's from the concept of a board of directors.
Yeah.
Directors control an entity.
Yeah.
The governing body, the people that you put in there, whether it's yourself or others, that is the group of people that control your entity. So that's important to understand that.
And the information we're putting in on our staff needs to match the ID they're providing in their VOI, so their full names. We've done that.
Which is good. We're answering all the questions as we go.
I think there's some questions here that, you decide whether you want to do this now, because it might be more relevant when
A
we're
little later
talking
on,
about.
yeah.
So it's about at what stage does a conveyancer perform VOI and AML CTF checks? And I'm assuming they mean on clients.
On clients.
And it's, I think it's more probably something we talk about later on, because this is just about staff, and this is what we've talked about as something we need to talk about today.
Absolutely. So that client due diligence we'll talk about in a segment a little later on.
Yeah.
After the break, we come back on that
Yeah,
one. We can dig in,
exactly.
It's a big one.
Are you required to complete VOI onboarding check? Oh, that's a client one as well, sorry. If I'm a sole operator, do I still need a separate compliance officer? No, you're just wearing all hats.
Yep, exactly.
It's
gonna wear
you being
Yep,
everything.
you get to do the lot.
That's
and
exactly
take out
right.
the garbage and answer the phone as well.
Yep. No, I think,
We're pretty well covered.
questions?
yeah,
Okay.
I think we are.
Excellent. Well, that's good.
Let's get on to the big ones, risk assessment, policy and procedures.
I tried to jump the gun and get us ahead there, but let's go back to it now.
Yeah, I think. Look, and the risk assessment really is the foundation of your AML CTF program, because you can't really build a program to prevent, or to manage and mitigate risk without understanding exactly what risks you face. And so this process is a straight digitisation from the starter kit. So it is designed and focused on smaller entities, so reporting entities with 15 staff or fewer. So that's the way AUSTRAC has built this particular risk assessment process, with our advice as well. And what it does is it identifies the inherent risks that a business in conveyancing faces on a day-to-day basis. So it's just the inherent risks. If you're a larger firm, so if you've got 15, 16 and more staff, if you've got more locations, geographic locations, if you deal a lot with customers from offshore, clients from offshore, if you deal with clients who've got complex corporate structures, these sorts of things really do raise the risk of money laundering occurring through your business, unbeknownst to you. And so for those sorts of larger, more complex organisations, you will need to do a more sophisticated risk assessment process. So this one is for the smaller firms. However, what it does do, even for a larger firm, is it gets you to think about the inherent risk that you face. You will just need to think further and more deeply about how you manage those risks. So we'll take you through the development of a risk assessment for a standard conveyancing business with 15 or fewer staff in the Compliance Centre. This follows the bouncing ball of the AUSTRAC starter kits.
Apologies there, I'm just working with our demo accounts and making sure we get a really clean working, at least on the policy and process. Our demo account has been used quite a lot by AMs, and it kind of puts a lot of pressure on the automated system, and I just want to make sure we get as clean as possible for a walkthrough here. So what I did was just navigate back to my Compliance Centre as we should already be in before. If it's not, it is the Compliance Centre at the top. I was doing some logins and logging out so I can be in a different account for this. You navigate yourself to the firm risk assessment.
Yep. So click on the tab.
Click on the tab and let the system
Already
start to load.
straightforward, it'll think about it, hopefully it'll connect. There we go, well done.
And we'll run the automated. There is options to upload your own, Richard.
So this one, so as I was mentioning before, larger firms, you need a more sophisticated risk assessment. So for that situation, you can develop that either with a consulting firm, or you can do it yourselves and follow the instructions, if you like, within the guidance from AUSTRAC. There's only about 300 pages of guidance.
Yes.
There's the Act and the rules you'll need to read as well. But it is possible to do this yourself. I've dealt with clients who have done it themselves, and they've come to Grant Thornton and said, well, can you just check this for us? So we've done that as well. And so if you've developed your own, or if you've developed it with a consulting firm, that's great, or with any other methodology, you can then upload your risk assessment into the Compliance Centre. And what that does is it enables you to keep your AML program all in one place. So it does make keeping an audit trail a whole lot easier if you do upload it in here. You can use then your risk assessment, your specific risk assessment yourself, and you can then use that to flow through into your policies, but you can still use the procedures for things like client due diligence and client onboarding in the Compliance Centre. Cool. Okay.
For our purposes here, we'll be using the digitised version of it. Is a lot easier, in my opinion. But
yep.
Yeah.
It is, but it's not always suitable. So yeah.
Yes, very true.
Let's go.
Lands in the designated service.
So that's the first port of call, is what am I actually doing? Is what I'm doing a designated service? So therefore, am I a reporting entity, and do I need an MLTF risk assessment? So we've decided that yes, for conveyancing, essentially, as I mentioned before, it's Section 6 of the AML CTF Act. It is Table 6, and for conveyancers, it's Item 1.
Yeah.
Nice and simple, and in this case, because it is filtered through to a conveyancing sector, we'll just see that one option come up on the designated service.
That's a good point. You've started by logging in as a conveyancing business,
Yep.
so that reduces the amount of ancillary material you need to read through and consider. That's right. So you've said you're a conveyancer. Okay, so your designated service is Item 1 of Table 6.
Okay. Already selected, and we can push on to the client types.
Right. Okay. So this is where we start considering, I guess, when you're building a risk assessment, what you've got to think about are the key risk vectors, which are basically the client types, the type of people that you deal with. Then you've got to think about the actual services that you provide to them, and the way you provide those services, so that the channels that you use to deal with your clients. And finally, you need to consider the country risk of dealing with that client as well. So we'll go through each of those 4 areas as we demo the build out of your risk assessment. So to begin with, who do you deal with? Are they, individuals? Are they, companies? Are they partnerships? There's a description in the Compliance Centre of each of those client types. So you can go through, have a read. Again, if you find that you're down the track dealing with a different type of client that doesn't fit one that you've already pre-selected, you can go back into your risk assessment.
I was just about to say, we are
and add them in.
that. Yeah.
It's really important to know what AUSTRAC really wants is for everybody to have a compliant AML CTF program that is properly implemented and that is maintained. And that last bit, maintaining your program, it's really easy to do here.
It's a live document, really, because if you suddenly get a fantastic matter in, but it's a trust or partnership, not something you've really done before, but you want to take it on, that's fine. You just go back to your risk assessment and tick the box.
Really important.
Yeah,
really important to do that, because if you end up dealing with something out of the ordinary that you haven't covered in your risk assessment, you may not have the right policy and procedure set up to deal with that particular type of customer. So it is important that you get those new opportunities, come back in, hit that new button, and let that run through the program and build out the policy and procedures that go with it. Cool. Okay, so you've got everything in there. My word, that's a very busy conveyancing organisation.
Well, that's what I ticked.
I was going to
did you?
say,
Yeah,
a few of the clients I've dealt with, Jenny, was one we did look
Right.
at, and I think you covered pretty much
Yeah.
those.
Everything?
And
I
government
certainly
bodies
wouldn't
is-
do a lot of associations,
Yeah.
but
If it did come in, it's
definitely,
something.
yeah, definitely. Government body, don't trust them.
Sorry. Sorry, AUSTRAC. Hopefully you're not watching this. So in that case, what we're going to leave the governing
I'm
bodies
gonna
out of
leave
it
that
for
off
now.
there,
Okay, cool.
which just
So
align
let's
with
click
Jenny
next.
here
So
as well, which
we've
would be-
defined the customer types, right?
Yeah.
So that helps in the background build out the things like policy considerations and procedural details, if you like. Now the next thing is the channels.
How you interact.
Yeah, how do you interact with them? And this one's pretty easy to click through as well.
Yeah. I think most of experience I've spoken with would
Almost
almost
everything.
cover all, and in person is
Yeah.
potentially for some that I have dealt with might not
Okay.
actually do in person if they
Older
are.
people
Older
like to do
But
it
the
in
client,
person.
I'm talking businesses that might have a more online presence, and it is,
Oh, yeah,
and that might be
yeah.
something they actually don't
Yeah,
offer.
but a
Yeah.
lot of
To a degree.
firms in suburbs, in regional
Definitely have
areas,
it, yes.
people will go and see them because
Okay.
they know them.
Yep.
They'll
Okay,
go see
yep.
them. That practice is quite common. It's only in the cities that we're impersonal.
All right. Okay.
We'll push through. I think that one is pretty self-explanatory, but this
Yeah,
is
sure.
where
This
things
is
start to
it.
get a bit hairy.
Yeah. So this is where we start to then sort of try and understand the specific risk of a specific type of interaction, right? So a specific type of transaction. So now when we're considering these, what we're trying to do is you've got a pre-populated risk MLTF, so money laundering or terrorism financing risk level that AUSTRAC has endorsed for a particular type of risk factor for the designated service. So when you see here on the screen, you've got the actual list of different type of risk factors for the designated service, and on the top right-hand part of each box, you've got a low, medium, or high. And so that is where we've built in the AUSTRAC recommendation from the starter kits that says, okay, so high value and unfinanced transactions. So that is perceived to be inherently a medium money laundering, terrorism financing and proliferation financing risk. Okay?
But only if the value is over 1.5?
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
In this instance,
the way that it's worded in the guidance, if you like, and in the starter kits is around that sort of that level. However, the whole idea of AML CTF is about your discretion and taking a risk-based approach and thinking about what you're doing and being aware of whether or not the transaction you're involved in could involve illicit funds. So just because it's not $1.5 million, just if it's a $500,000 transaction, if there's no financing involved, and if it's an 18-year-old student who is buying a property for $500,000,
Yeah.
ask a couple of questions.
So I think that's important to bring up the two steps
Yeah.
to actually be a medium,
Yeah.
which you've just really explained quite well
Yeah.
there then. So
Yeah.
even though it's marked medium, there's a second test really to say, as part of your due diligence, you find out whether, yep, there's a second tick, 18-year-old kid buying something for 500,000,
Yeah.
that would be the second tick of concern.
I think when
Yeah.
we go through the customer due diligence, we're going to run some examples as best we possibly can, and we could probably look at the two triggers
Yeah.
and two mediums
Yeah.
that might sit side by
Yeah.
side with each other that
But
might
then
require
change.
enhanced customer due diligence, which
Yeah.
we can get into
We'll
as
dig
well.
into as well. But I think Jenny, you're right. It's the designated service risk factor on its own is a medium, and then when you consider then the client risk factor or the country risk factor or the channel risk factor, that can bump that up or down, if you like.
Yeah, that could
Yeah.
bump it down to low.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
But-
Once you've done a bit more due diligence,
But,
just from the point
proper
of view,
due diligence, then you would still send it to a compliance officer for double.
well, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll demonstrate that through policy and process
Okay,
because
great.
you don't automatically escalate, a low or medium scenario.
So the biggest question here that
Yeah, right,
I'm
yeah, sorry.
seeing is, well, how do we know? Because for a conveyance, how do we know when we start the designated service? Because of the speed of real estate being sold and purchased, our focus is to get the contract done, get the contract
totally.
contracts exchanged. We then start that process of bringing the client on board, sending a VOI.
Okay.
that happens today. So there's a risk there now. It could be a con person that just fails to settle, you know, or you've done the work, you've done the contract review. Then this has happened to me. You've had dropped everything for this person, ends up being a con man, disappears, doesn't pay the deposit. You get everything, signs the contract, but then disappears and fails to pay the deposit. So you know,
what do we do?
What do we do? So that's there. That risk is always there, but you're not doing your VOI check till after you've exchanged contract.
Well, let's get to that, because I think what we're trying to do here is first build the risk assessment in the program, and what you're talking about is a very specific scenario.
Well, I think, and that's just where I think they're coming, because they're like, well, I don't want to take on any risk. I don't want to take on any risk. I'm seeing questions like that.
Okay. Well,
so I don't want to tick any of these as yes.
Well, let's go through that and talk through what that would mean in terms of impact on your business, right? Because the fact is that in conveyancing, there is money laundering, terrorism financing and proliferation financing risk, full stop.
Yeah.
So if you're going to continue to run if you're running a conveyancing business, there is a risk that business has been misused.
Been up to today.
That is why Tranche 2 exists, because we have identified property transactions as being, you know, a high money laundering risk. It is a well-established fact by the law enforcement agencies and the government. So we know that's going on. So what we're asking is that people move into this regime, or it's now a law, you're now obliged to consider the risk and to act on it.
Yeah, so for me, I think they should be feeling comfortable that they've been dealing with the risk now. They've just got to do more due diligence and maybe more reporting as an additional step as part of their conveyancing practice.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily not take on any risk.
Correct.
Yep.
So let's just quickly step through so that people can do this at home, because the idea is try and get you all to build your program while you're with us live. So you'll need to go through and assess these actual service risk factors, if you like. So when we talk about accepting the risk, high value and unfinanced transactions, there may be nothing wrong with them. So most of you should tick yes, I'll accept that risk. However, if you tick no, let's just do a quick no, you then have to put in what are you going to do about managing your entire business so that you don't accept this risk. So what that means is, for instance, high value and unfinanced transactions, you might say, we don't want an unfinanced transaction at any level. So when I tick no to accepting that risk, I then type in the firm will only accept matters where there is a finance provision in the transaction from the buyer.
Okay,
Full
so
stop.
here's the
And that's what you
question, because I know someone will want to know this question. You're acting for someone who is selling and buying simultaneously. They're getting their proceeds for purchase from their sale. So that's an unfinanced.
Well, perhaps it is an unfinanced, or it could well be involving mortgages, but
If there's no mortgage, you know, they're downsizing, right?
Downsizing, exactly. So you assess the risk of that particular matter.
Yeah.
But in your risk assessment, so this is what we're building. We're building the program, you've got to remember. We're not talking about running specific scenario right at this step. We're trying to help everybody at home build their program first.
Yeah.
So you consider the risk factor of the designated services just inherently, it's called. So it's just in and of itself, in order to get through this and decide which risks your business is willing to accept, which ones you're not going to accept. If you're not going to accept it, you need to actually put in a process in place to stop that risk occurring within your business.
Is it fair to say at this point we're really looking at the business that we be onboarding, and we're saying, if I had a client who walked in with this particular circumstance, would I accept this and continue continue
and
to act?
It's just about
would I do that or would I
there.
not do that? And if I'm not going to, then I have to explain the reasons as to how I would avoid or never touch on this particular risk.
That's it.
I think on the onboarding phase we can talk about that later, and you look at a transaction
So
level.
you might ask additional questions at that point to help you decide
when we do the onboarding, but at this point, I think the crucial part is would I accept it just at the beginning? And if I won't, then I think Richard's talking about how are you going to make sure your firm, in the theoretical circumstances that might occur, and you might get a client come in, is how would I avoid this? So in this instance, it would be that if a client comes to me, I commence the process, I've started a VOI order, and I ask them, you have a mortgage or a bank, and they say no, that might be a point where you say, well, my policy tells me I have to stop at this point, and you would offboard and move on.
Correct.
But I think we can talk about that as we get into
Absolutely.
Because I think we've got a pretty decent section on exactly all these questions, and I really think you're going to...
We're running a little close to time.
Just time-wise.
on this one. So let's get through these risk factors. So let's leave that as a no, and then you'll be able to see how that impacts later on. So in terms of high-value physical currency transactions, do you take cash or not? And so, let's put in as a yes, maybe. Virtual assets, that's probably a no.
Yeah.
Does that
No.
mean you're going to take Bitcoin? Probably not. So we won't accept digital currencies as tender for any matter.
I won't go through the full one because my typing skills will not get that good,
That'll
but I
do.
think we heard what
Yep,
Richard said.
Exactly.
Um,
Unusual service requests. So this is a scenario where someone wants you to do something in your conveyancing business, which truly doesn't appear to have any real economic or legal grounds. So they might be basically selling their house that they bought last year for $2 million to their 5-year-old child for $20 million.
Yeah.
So you might just say, look, I'm not going to accept that sort
No,
of transaction.
you wouldn't now.
You probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
You probably look at that and go,
Alarm
I just
bells
don't
are
want
going
to.
off
Yeah,
now.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I guess though, in terms of the risk factor itself, you can say, look, we'll accept that unusual pattern, but we'll just have a way of managing and mitigating that later on. So either a yes or a no doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Put it as a yes and see what comes out of the policy. Rightio. So that's just purely the services.
Just the
risk
services.
factors.
That's
Yep,
what I do,
yep.
and would I accept or not accept that going if it did come into my business
On its own.
Yeah.
And then we go into the same routine for the client. So, what client risk factors is the business just about the client willing to accept? So again, we go through here and it sort of says, well, okay, if you think someone's committed an offence in order to generate the funds that they're going to be using in your transaction, you're not sure, you don't have to be sure at all, but if you think they've committed an offence, so again, it might be some sort of a scenario where in a small country town, you might know who is involved in some criminal activity, and they might come to you and want to purchase a house. What are you going to do about that? Now, you may well say, look, we will accept that risk in and of itself, but I will just have a way of managing and mitigating that.
Yeah, exactly.
So again,
you can still
just
accept it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
But-
deal with that within your policy
Yeah,
and process
yeah,
and have
exactly
and
right.
make sure that's still
And so you might
operates.
just leave that as a yes. You'll notice on the top right-hand box there, it's a high risk scenario, that one. So you'd say yes to that. Politically exposed persons, no reason not to accept those. They're going to be at least medium, if not high, if they're
Domestic,
foreign.
yeah.
Domestic
Domestic
is a real
yeah.
important one there as well. But
International organisation, also medium risk. So you'd accept those as well, perhaps.
Maybe
now-
not Donald Trump.
Maybe not. Well, this is where you get the foreign PEP. So foreign PEP individuals.
Yeah.
So this is a politically exposed person from a foreign country, a Donald Trump, if you will. So if you do accept those, they're automatically a high risk customer. No
so
matter
when
what
they
transaction.
come in, you would have that process to go through a high risk rating
Absolutely.
and
So this
onboarding.
will drive the policy. So if we click yes to that, yep. So that will drive. Then there'll be a policy for dealing with foreign PEPs. Okay, so legal structures creating effective anonymity. So we're all aware of these, we've all talked about them, they've been in the news. Again, it might be one of those situations where you say, well, look, if I can't dig down and understand who actually is the beneficial owner, who is the controller of these monies or assets, what am I going to do about that? Would I accept the matter initially and then dig deeper and understand whether or not there is an unacceptable risk? You might say yes to that as well. You might say no. It
You might
depends.
say no.
Yeah.
It's just,
Exactly. And clicking on no for that one, you'd put in how would we manage this risk? How would we make sure the business doesn't deal with it? We won't accept a briefing. We won't accept a matter from an organisation in which we cannot identify the beneficial owners or controllers, or of which I should say. Sorry, not in which. Of which we cannot
Again,
identify.
I won't go down the full writing there, but yes.
That'll
I think
do.
Richard's
Third party
clear.
for individuals, absolutely, you might accept that risk because you might have a scenario where someone's operating on behalf of their parent with the parent's full knowledge. So you'd say, yeah, that's okay. Clients with significant unexplained wealth. Yeah, and again, you might well accept the risk of that at this stage because it is just an isolated thing. Unexplained wealth, it will just trigger further questions to try and understand where the wealth has come from.
Yeah.
Initially though, you might say, well, I don't quite understand where this 25-year-old got the $10 million. They're, they work at Woolworths as a retail operator, as a cashier. However, I'm going to ask some more questions. It might turn out they won lotto, and there's nothing suspicious about that. So you might answer yes to that specific scenario with a client on its own auspices. So then you've got charities and non-profits. These are considered slightly higher risk because often it's harder to understand where the money's come from. Will you accept charities and not-for-profits, Jenny?
I have acted for them,
Okay.
but Their cash purchase, but it was all fine.
Yeah,
like
further questions to be asked.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it unexplained wealth in that instance? Yeah, we'll leave
Absolutely.
that one for a bit later.
Yeah, and then look, this is an easy one at the end.
Low complexity clients, yeah.
Let's take those low complexity clients. They're low risk. Okay, moving on. So that's we've gone through those risk factors. We're establishing your business's risk appetite. What are the things that you will allow your business to deal with? What are the things you will build a way of preventing your business from dealing with? Then we go to the delivery channels. This one here is an interesting one. It is suspected false and fraudulent identity. So when you're not quite sure that the person is who they say they are, or the entity is controlled by the people they say it is, this is a high risk scenario, because one of the first and foremost elements of managing your risk is understanding who you're dealing with. So you might say no to that, or you might say, look, yeah, we'll accept it because we'll dig deeper. Mm-hmm. So we're going with
Go with yes.
We'll go with yes, yeah, why not? That makes it easy to click through here. Okay, countries. This one now, so the country risk rating is built around, under the Act, it's built around, AUSTRAC's listing, which is essentially the Basel Index, which is a global index that rates every country in the world for money laundering risk, right? Ordinarily, if you don't do this in the Compliance Centre, you've got to go to that Basel Index. Yeah.
But this is built in.
It's built in.
Yeah,
So
really cool.
the easy way to do your country risk rating
That's
is do it in the
fantastic,
Compliance
yeah.
Centre, because you just basically use the drop-down box, add a country, that automatically checks it against the Basel Index, and then you move on to, it also checks it against the AUSTRAC High Risk Index and the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force.
I'll show some examples of different
Yeah.
country ratings.
There we go.
If you happen to act for a client in that particular country. Is it a resident in that country or someone residing in that country?
Yeah, someone
you're
residing in that
acting
country,
for?
yeah.
Apologies,
So
Okay.
so you put those in, that will then change the risk rating within your business.
Within
right?
the business, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and we can finish the risk.
Yeah, we're done. We've done for the four vectors: client, we've done client, designated service, delivery channel, and country. They're the four key areas that you go through and build your risk appetite around those.
So going through that,
Yeah.
I think it's really important for everyone to think about their costs agreement. Because if you put into your costs agreement these things that you've said no to, that then allows you to cease acting. Because you've had them sign your costs agreement, and they are aware that if they fall into something that you say you won't act for, then you have a right to cease acting.
So that comes down to really a legal and a corporate question, commercial question.
But I think that's where they're getting concerned, because they've started working. I mean, it's the same with me. They've started working. They find out that they want to build it in this structure, and you're not quite sure, and it's all very complicated, and it's all starting.
They
and
can
you
change
go,
their
look,
entities.
I'm just not willing to take that risk on. I just want to stick to the mums and dads that are cash finance, whatever. I don't want to do this. I just feel like I'm taking a risk that I'm not prepared to do. I think if you factor that into your costs agreement in a way in which you say, and it can be generic, can't it? You don't have to be specific about it, but just say, if they're through the course of the transaction, through my due diligence, I feel like I can't take on this matter any further due to ongoing due diligence, then you have a right to cease work. That's something, I think that's where you would put it. What you say, we probably need to have a think about, but what they're, at the moment, they're kind of saying, well, if I'm saying no there, but then I get something and I know that person, then, but my risk assessment says no, should I be taking it? But then you go back and amend it and say, yes, I will take that on.
So a lot of what you're really speaking to there, Jenny, comes down to, really commercial and legal decisions that, we don't opine on, and it's not part of the AML CTF program.
Yeah, but it's for them to
consideration.
decide.
Yeah. I think
and how
it's
they
fair to
protect
say,
themselves.
One of the things that I have seen, there's guidance from the Law Society of New South Wales and other states as well that's out there. There's guidance from AUSTRAC as well in the starter kits. An easy way to I guess decide to not continue in a matter is to simply communicate with the potential client to say, look, unfortunately, through our due diligence, a conflict has arisen and we can no longer act on your behalf, full stop. That's a very simple way to put it.
And certainly if they're not providing you with the information you need as part of your due diligence, they're not showing you bank statements, they're not showing you further identification documents, then of course you have that right, because you can't complete your due diligence under AML or CTF.
So these things, really do fall outside of the AML CTF program as such. So I think, we've only gotten through the risk assessment so far.
Yeah, no, but this is where
we've got
this is where
15
the
minutes to get
questions
the
are coming
policy
from.
and procedures.
Yeah.
Yep, which I get,
Okay.
and I think we can sort of circle some of those back, because, I guess what we want to try and do today is to get through the building of the program so that the people on the Zoom call have built their AML CTF program. It can be changed later on. You can go back in and iterate your program yourselves.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the
I think we can talk a little bit about if you were had to redo your risk assessment. Just functionally on the system.
Yeah.
3 dots is your almost your save
Universal.
universal
software thing.
And there's
Yeah.
questions from the audience all about this. They can go back
good.
if
Yeah.
they decide
Yes.
to do something that they've said no to. They just go back and update their risk
And
assessment.
the key difference,
Yeah.
and something that's been added, is update your risk assessment. Will save all of your answers, so you don't have to go through them all again. If you did want to restart it from scratch, you definitely could restart it from scratch.
Please don't.
It's an option for you, but it does take a bit of time for you to complete. So
Yep.
it is a drop-down option. I won't do it because it'll spit us back and might be slow down the policy process,
Absolutely.
but you'll land on those same pages that we just went
Yep.
through, and you can go and find a particular item, change it, and complete your risk assessment
Absolutely,
again.
and that will be in the audit trail.
Yeah, there is, there should only be
Oh, here we
one,
go.
but there is a full audit trail that will be saved, and it's all the way through the Compliance Centre. There is audits on absolutely everything that is done within the system.
That goes back to what we mentioned earlier, that AUSTRAC's, sort of your obligation is to maintain the AML CTF program.
Yeah.
So you do need to have that audit trail to show AUSTRAC, or potentially to show AUSTRAC if you needed to down the track, the way that program has been maintained over time. So if you make a change, so if you have that new client from a new country, add that new country in, that updates your program, being it's in the audit trail.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, we'll move on to the policy process,
Let's-
because we do have a break up coming for those that do need some time.
Yep.
You will navigate yourself across to the policy and process tab.
Right.
Again, we can the upload your option is there, as Richard's already spoken about on the firm risk assessment. If it is done, we're going to go through and use the automated
Yeah.
builder.
Let's do it.
I think it's a bit more
Yep.
applicable.
Yep.
Excellent.
There has been a little bit of an update. If anyone has tried this before, there is now an option for you to pull in your organisation name into the document, which was a big sticking point for a lot of people.
Okay.
This pulls from your admin and user settings. It is an option here for you to update that if it does not align. Our support team is also there to reach out and potentially fix any of these issues. Just a little heads up for anyone that's done it, they can probably come and rerun.
Yep. Ideally, that organisation name would align with the organisation name that is enrolled with AUSTRAC.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to have those two things matching up.
Yeah. And then we just select the number of staff.
1 to 15 for our purposes
for our
today,
purposes today, and
to
we
get you
click
through
next.
this build. Yep. And so then what that's doing is it's taking your answers in the risk assessment, so effectively taking your risk appetite, and it's using that to logically go through and connect to the policies that are built into the AUSTRAC starter kit. So what triSearch Compliance Centre has done is digitised those policies from the starter kit from AUSTRAC into your program now. So it goes through it, thinks through those answers that you've put in, those yeses and nos that you put in around risk acceptance in your risk assessment, and it builds out a compliant policy document. So as you can see now, it's delivered that in record time,
Yes.
which is a good thing because we're down to about 10 minutes before the break. So luckily we've now got a compliant AML CTF set of policies. Even just the table of contents there gives you a sense of the work that's been done in the background. So this covers off policies across your personnel, policies across your clients, and then how we're going to go about maintaining the program. I've been banging on
So
about
it
that.
generates it all for you. You don't then have to go and build it yourself.
Correct.
Just one of the
So if you've followed the bouncing ball and you've gotten to this point and you've clicked along with Mark, you now have a policy document, an AML CTF compliant policy document built around your risk assessment. So that's the way that works. So that was a relatively quick piece.
That was the quick one, which was good to get to, and I was also worried on the system end whether we would get something to load, but thankfully it's played nice.
That seems to have worked well.
Yeah, again, we're going to revert back to the 3 dots if we do need to update this, particularly if you have updated your risk assessment. The directive is then to update your policy immediately after that. And that is a 3-dot option, and you can upload a new if it was, you can update that. It will take you back to that screen that we just saw, and you can run it or upload. There is an audit trail that does exist, and with the policy and process, there's a version history. I've talked about this in a humorous way, that if a compliance officer and you had a bit of an argument with them and potentially they went and changed something before you off-boarded them, so to speak, you can come back as a firm owner and have a look at the version histories to see if anything was changed and potentially revert back to old versions as well.
That's interesting. A disgruntled employee.
That's the example I use because it seems to get a bit of a laugh out of people.
That worked.
You can also download it in a document in a Word format or a PDF if you did want to store it as secondary elsewhere.
Now this is important in terms of also training and onboarding your staff, right?
Yeah.
Because your staff need to understand, read and appreciate your risk assessment, your policies and your procedures, because effectively your staff are going to be implementing your procedures. So if you're not just on your own, you do need to download this as a document to make it easy for all of your staff to be able to read, review, think about, ask questions of you about, understand. So okay, we decided we're not going to accept the risk of flipping great wedges of cash. So all your staff need to know that if someone walks in with a big bag of cash, sorry mate, we don't take it. So, they need to understand all the items that are in here. It will end up being a bit of reading for them, but that might be a good thing. Cover off a lonely weekend at home, reading the AML program, it's not a bad idea. So once that's done, as it is now, you've effectively done a huge chunk of the work that, when I started doing this in 2000 and well, actually it was about 2007, but as of the Act coming into place in 2006, we had to spend weeks, it might have been months, reading through the Act and reading through the rules and the guidance of the time, which was thin, to try and figure out what this should look like. You've done it in how long have we been going?
When we were talking about and building them last year and building the starter kits, we were working off documents this thick. But a lot of the time, in terms of our sector,
a lot of it's not relevant. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a sector that is time poor as it is as well, Jenny. So I think the time saving is definitely something that's got to be looked at and used.
Absolutely. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I think on the policy and process, and once that is completed, is there, and we've got some control links to move around.
Yep.
I don't know if there was moving into some question times, if there are some additional
There
questions
are some
rolled
questions.
in.
We haven't got much time, but effectively you've got now your whole policy document includes your procedures.
We've got
You
time
got a little bit of time? You got a little bit of time, Jenny?
But
Okay.
how often
tell
do
I'm
I need
nervous.
to update the policy? It's basically every time you make changes to
Yeah, absolutely.
your
The
risk
policy,
and your risk assessment.
Yeah, exactly. Policy changes you need to update when you change your business. So if something changes in your business, if you provide a new type of product, so a new type of conveyancing service, or you provide a conveyancing service to a new type of client, or you decide to provide a service to a client from a new country, those things trigger changes, and you basically
And you
start
haven't
them.
listed that country.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you go back to your risk assessment, make the change in the risk assessment, rerun the policy and procedures, and that will then punch out a whole new AML CTF program with audit trail. Makes it really easy.
Great. So let's make this very clear. It's the citizenship of the client, not where the client resides.
So if the client is here in Australia, and they are here in Australia as a temporary resident, permanent resident, they're going to live in the home, then for all intents and purposes, it'll be their citizenship that you consider, and it gets a little complex in that scenario because you've got to consider where the funds have come from and those sorts of things that might drive.
So the question is, for example, if the citizen's Chinese and has a Chinese passport, but lives in Australia and is buying, you're looking at the high risk. Because China is under the Basel Index a high-risk country.
That's right, you would, because again, it comes back to just this consideration of the actual real risk that you're facing. So there's nothing wrong with someone being a resident in Australia but being a citizen of a high-risk country.
Yeah, it just means you've got to do a bit more due diligence.
Yeah, you just need to make sure that you understand where the funds have come from.
Yeah.
It may be that it's difficult to establish that just prima facie, so you may need to ask a few more questions. So yes, you would take into consideration China. To be on the safe side.
In that scenario, if you decided to keep acting for that client, they were a cash buyer and they had an Australian bank account, money comes through that bank into your trust account.
Is that enough?
Is that enough?
No. Not in my opinion. Again, look, this isn't legal advice. This is really, my advice as an advisor in the AML CTF regime, right? So just purely a bank statement that shows $3 million in the bank, and then they're transferring that from that bank into your trust account, that doesn't establish the source of those funds. It doesn't establish the source of wealth of that particular client.
But if it's gone through the bank channel, say through CBA, through Westpac, where my trust account is,
Yeah, it doesn't
and then
change your
into it.
It doesn't change your obligations, right? So you've got to think
Yeah.
about, you're providing a service. There is a risk in the provision of that service that your service is being used to launder money, illicit funds, right? That doesn't change just because CBA, Westpac, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, a list as long as your arm of wonderful banks all around the world. Think about the global financial crisis. So that doesn't change the actual risk of your designated service you're providing to that person. And that's what you've got to consider. So when you're talking about someone who has triggered all your high risk flags, you need to go into enhanced client due diligence. And we'll talk about that, a little later on.
Yeah.
But in that situation, just a bank statement that says, I've got a lot of money and here it comes your way, that's not helping me understand the source of funds or source of wealth at all. And operating as a compliance officer in the past, as I have in large complex organisations, we would often get that from the client. They'd say, oh, well, mate, here's my bank statement. Well, that's terrific. Where did the $10 million come from?
Yeah.
And those cases where people have been really pushy and said, no, I've given you all the information, they're the ones we've had to freeze accounts, do more digging, and lo and behold, they end up in the press.
Yeah, okay.
As con people and fraudsters.
But therefore, at that point, if they say that to you, you can then decide, well, look, I can't complete my obligations under AML CTF.
Always keep the conversation to a minimum.
Yeah.
You'd simply say, okay, that's fine, no worries.
Yeah.
Now, you've got a choice in that scenario. And we'll talk about that in the client due diligence and the way that we go about it, because if you have a suspicion, if you have what we call grounds for suspicion that money laundering has occurred or is about to occur, or your services, I should say, are potentially going to be used to launder money, then once you establish those grounds for suspicion, you have an obligation to report the suspicious matter to AUSTRAC. It doesn't mean that you have to discontinue the transaction. It just means that you've established your grounds of suspicion, you've decided that this is suspicious. Now, you don't have to actually establish it beyond reasonable doubt. You are not judge, jury, and police.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
it's just suspicious.
Yep.
Report that to
Report
AUSTRAC.
it. Yep.
And then make a decision about how you handle the transaction as well. And we'll deal with that in a little bit.
What if you select no for risk, but then accept the risk? Is there risk there?
Wow, that's a doozy. If you said no to accepting a situation that has inherent risk, and later on you come across a transaction and you decide, actually, no, I do want to deal with this one. What I would recommend is you go back into your risk assessment in the compliance centre, you change that no to a yes. And then that will run through the whole policy and procedures piece that we'll talk about a little later on in a bit more detail. That'll run through all of that and it will tell you, what do I do now? Okay, how do I accept the high risk situation? What do I need to do in order to manage and mitigate that money laundering risk that I've decided I'm going to deal with?
Are your documents in Compliance Centre, your risk assessment and your policy and procedures, are they confidential? Who can get access to those?
So the short answer is yes, they are confidential. They are, but all the client-facing staff that have been onboarded could open the document to view it and have it as a place to look at, but it would not be pushed out publicly.
Okay.
So that's the AML CTF program, and that's, as I mentioned before, your staff need to be able to read the program and the risk assessment, because they need to understand what it is that you've decided you will accept and what you won't accept.
Yeah.
How to deal.
If a client asked to see what your policies were, do you have to provide them with your policy?
Well, that's a really interesting legal question that I can't answer. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to dive into that sort of murky ground. But I think there's obviously the Privacy Act around what a client, how you can handle client information. But a client asking you about your own business policies and processes, that's a decision that you make.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
You decide what you want to do with that sort of
well,
information.
again, that comes back to how you said how you describe it when I said putting something in your cost agreement. And from that, they say, well, what's your policy? Can I see it? And you say, well, no, that's something that between me and AUSTRAC.
I think that's a very complex question
that
you're talking about, what you put into cost agreements and that sort of thing. I think that's the sort of thing that, as a business, if you're going to put it in your cost agreement, might be worthwhile getting legal advice.
Before you put it in there. And time-wise, we might have
we're right,
break, which is nice for everybody.
Time for another break.
We'll be back in about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. So, yep, so 11:35 a.m. is when we start again, is that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Back at 11:35 a.m. everybody. So take 15, relax, perhaps do a quick bit of background reading, and we'll see you back here in 15
Yeah,
minutes.
just
at
whip through your
11:35.
policy in
Yeah,
15
give that
minutes.
it's only 80 or 90 pages, so give that a quick read, quick scan, speed reading.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Client onboarding next.
Oh, looking forward to it.
Going to be your
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is where
Favourite one.
Jenny's really rubbing her hands together about that one. That's
Well, I just need to ask the questions for members.
This next session is going to be a 30-minute session on client due diligence. So we're going to talk through and demonstrate a little bit about the client onboarding process itself, how you go about doing that, the initial client due diligence or customer due diligence piece. We'll cover off the ongoing client due diligence as well, because I think that's important to understand what your obligations are on an ongoing basis. We'll touch on the enhanced client due diligence, but also we'll talk importantly a little bit about the reliance process, so reliance provisions, whereby one reporting entity can rely on the know your customer or client due diligence aspects to be provided across, so you don't end up with a customer, getting VOI'd, 4, 5 or 6 times all through a property transaction. So that reliance provision is a really important one to talk about as well. Okay, so having set that sort of a framework, we've got about 30 minutes now. Mark, I'll pretty much hand over to you to show us how we go about onboarding a client.
Yeah, definitely.
Take us through that if you can.
Okay, again, I'm going to do this repetition that we are working through a demo account, and we figured the best way to show you and actually get through a start and end is to use some demo data. A lot of it obviously won't be available at your end. You'll be waiting on clients to complete steps. For me to access that, I'm going to do it through what we call a website access. A lot of you will have the option to do the VOI orders well within your TriConvey matter, loading up the triSearch page, and it will automatically connect and pull in the client details that you've entered into the matter details on that system.
So you don't have to re-enter client details
Yeah.
if you've got TriConvey.
Yes.
It just migrates the data.
Yeah, correct. So if you had 10 particular individuals that are all vendors of one property and you entered those into your matter details, when you moved into that triSearch tab, those 10 details will be loaded as individual orders for you to start to process and commence the onboarding. Similar to those that would have seen it already, the VOI is there, you will get the additional steps. What I'm doing now is merely just getting me into a demo data format for website users. They would still need to manually data entry and bring those details in here. So there are individual, organisation, trust and government body different onboarding steps that we'll do. We're going to focus mainly on the individual. I know we're talking about a non-individual webinar that's going to happen next week, and there's going to be a lot more detail on what that looks like process-wise.
Yep.
For you, you would enter the details that you would be, actually, apologies, this is where I'm going between 2 different systems because I wanted to generate. If you just bear with me while I log out of this particular system, go back into our demo data one.
Right, that makes sense. Let's go into the demo data.
That would make a lot more sense, so I can draw it in.
Okay, so remember this is when you're first onboarding a client. We're going to show you the process for going through the initial client due diligence, getting them on board in general, and demonstrating as much as we can how that process works through the VOI, which you're already doing. So, conveyancers already do that verification of identity step anyway. There's just an extra small step for AML CTF compliance, and that revolves around the watchlist screening in particular. So trying to identify whether or not your client or your customer is a politically exposed person. Are they listed as being sanctioned by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, by the Australian government effectively, or by other recognised global bodies? And have there also been adverse media that might lead you to reassess the risk of doing business with that particular customer? So that's a bit of an overview. So we're now ready to.
We're now
dig
ready.
in.
I apologise. We're
Cool.
bouncing
That's
between
all good.
different systems so we could get things as smooth as possible for this walkthrough.
That was pretty smooth.
As smooth as I could. Thank you for filling the gap there.
You did very well.
Yes. You guys will obviously not have access to a demo data option here. This is purely so we can get through this and not have to wait for an individual to complete a VOI and go through that process. You would enter the details in, including mobile number, date of birth. You may not know at the particular point of time. It can go and be entered at a later date. We'll push through to continuing the order, and this will then land on a page you should be somewhat familiar with. It looks very similar to the original VOI order. We now have, it's in terms of KYC, but know your client.
KYC,
your customer.
know your customer, know your client, whichever way you want to put it.
Whichever way you want to put it. And
That's already built in, is it? You
Yeah.
don't have to create one yourself for your company.
Oh yeah, you don't need to create your
No.
own forms. So there, look, in the AUSTRAC starter kit, there's about 40
Yeah.
different forms,
Yeah.
roughly speaking, and one of those is the client onboarding form. That's all baked in to the compliance centre.
Yep.
So you don't need to, I mean, in the starter kits and things like that, it sort of suggests when you're onboarding a client, you need to ask them questions about whether they're a PEP or not. You don't need to do that. You basically just need the identification details of name, date of birth and address, put all that in there, tick the boxes for which particular types of onboarding process you're going to do. So are you just doing the PEP sanctions adverse media screening? Are you sending out the KYC onboarding form to ask them to fill out some of the questions? Are you doing verification of identity? So you go through and tick the appropriate ones. For a brand new client, you tick all three.
Yeah, and I think that's a conversation point that happens with a few clients, is that with customers, that they may look to stage these, and that's definitely something that has become more functional within this conversion into a VOI coming into an AML and compliance centre connection. Is you can commence the order in terms of fees. It will come through once, and you can always come back to this. It'll be there in your triSearch tab within your TriConvey matter, or you can locate it. And you can run these checks at different times if for any reason you chose to do so. I won't talk to why anyone would want to run them separately. I think it's easy to get everything done in one hit. But if someone did for any reason, the important one at the moment is the VOI, and that will commence and bring it in. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to proceed and press the order with at least the 3 major steps that we need. It will.
I personally think that all 3 should be part of your precedent and process now.
Yeah, I think it is as we transition into the regime, you may well have conveyancing matters that have commenced now when you're not a reporting entity. So you might have completed VOI 3 weeks ago. You haven't enrolled yet. You don't have your program yet. You're doing that now with us today. So you might already have that VOI done. You don't necessarily need to do that again. So that might be a scenario where you don't tick the VOI box. So, that's, I think, what it's ideally for.
Yeah.
So,
But as of 1 July, it's probably...
easier.
Yeah.
Tick them all.
Or tick all 3, have that as your record.
Yep.
Show,
Absolutely. So we've effectively gone through and...
Yeah, so we've placed the order, and now what I can do purely for demonstration purposes is simulate the consumer. So this is simulating that the clients received their link, completed their VOI. It returned to you to review. You would have seen that very briefly pop up. That was where you and your staff members would come in to review the VOIs, accept it, send it back because you wanted something else changed, and come through and complete it. At any time you can get back into this particular window. Just a bit of an operational thing, I know that certain additional services were not used in the past because it was a sort of one-time order. Because it is now a moving order, you can now reorder these. You can place these at different times, particularly purchase declarations. I know some buyers would not know details at an onboarding stage, so they might not exchange for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And there is no additional cost. So a little bit more value there for our customers at
sending
least.
everything up front.
Yeah, and there is abilities to edit the details, and you can clean up the information that does go across to them. So if you didn't want to send it up front, you can come back in, and a really great feature now is there's no longer a cost that's associated with resending that. Once that is all completed, particularly the KYC onboarding form, I personally like to show people the form at this particular
that would be great.
time.
That's really important.
Now this one has been completed with some demo data, but I will let Richard talk to some of the information that's in there and possibly changes that might be made.
Really?
And what this actually means, what this is coming back to, this is the client's completed information. The client has answered these questions themselves. Do you trust the details? Do you run your own checks? There's a lot of questions that come up.
Some of the details in this form are built to reflect the starter kits again. So things, I mentioned this one before, things where we're asking them the basics, name, date of birth, address. So we ask all those, so we get that filled out. That's terrific. Are you known by another name? So that's, basically, have you got an alias? If so, what is that? And then we've got a few questions in the KYC form that are really covered off already in the PEP sanctions and adverse media screening. So things like asking them if they're a member of Parliament. So that will be detected through the PEP screening. So if they don't answer that question and you get back a form that has a gap there, you really don't need to worry if you're also ticking the box for PEP sanctions and adverse media screening, right? So there are some of these questions in here. So that was the Member of Parliament one. What are some of the other ones you've got in here?
It's what you related to, a family member of, a politically exposed person.
Yep. Relative or close associate, they call it, RCAs.
And then move into the purchase of property, and we talk about obviously that medium risk, 1.5 million, and your funding.
And this is again, if you're selling property in a capital city in Australia, 1.5 million, it's probably going to be a yes. So this helps you helps in the background shape the risk assessment. Okay, so what it's doing is it's ticking off these risk flags. That'll merge, as I say, with the PEP sanctions adverse media screening as well. Yeah. So then you've got options there for whether or not individual or sole trader. We go through, if they fill those out, that's great. Getting that detail is something you need from them. You're not going to get the sole trader details necessarily elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we talk about some of the other potentials for having someone represent the actual customer. So if the owner of the property is your customer, but they're having someone else represent them in terms of moving through the process with you as a conveyancer, then we need the details of the person who is acting on behalf of your customer.
Like a child, power of attorney.
Exactly.
Yep.
So you need things like the details of the person who is the agent of your customer. We could call it the agent of your customer.
Can we just stop for a moment? I'm getting a lot of questions of, I don't know where you went to in triSearch to start this. Could you just go back and show that
to start the whole VOI order? Okay. I could talk to my problem with loading.
How did they get this page?
Yeah, with loading TriConvey. So if you are a TriConvey users, when you're in your matter, in a particular matter, there will be a triSearch tab.
Yeah.
If you were to select it, my issue with loading this is it interferes with the demo data and it can crash a lot of things. So I can't load that, unfortunately. And when you're in that triSearch tab, you would have had the VOI, or now it's called the AML onboarding, including VOI link.
Next to their name.
It'd be next to the particular name of the individuals. Okay. When you are pushing through and placing that order, I'll push back into this. This is a page that should look familiar. This will very much align exactly with what they see in the triSearch tab when they are working on an individual person. If you're in a matter with multiple people, you'd likely scroll down and see that there's additional people there for you to onboard and potentially add more people to onboard at that particular time. So this is now your onboarding order for this particular person, this individual. When I have placed that order, these checks have returned. The only thing I can do that we can't do in real life is obviously simulate the consumer, and that was as if the client had received the link to complete this questionnaire and then entered the details that we saw on that screen. That flowed back in and was returned back to our system as they completed it. That goes by an email. I believe they click on a link, it loads it into an interactive PDF style question and answer form, and they answer the questions as best as they possibly can and complete it. And it returns back in and will always be accessible within this particular individual's onboarding order. I was able to view it here. I would talk to whether you actually need to review a little bit in the AML summary and some features that have been brought in to summarise it and bring in what you might need to. But it's always there for you to view. And the same with the PEP sanctions. Now this is done on demo data, so I don't believe we get any flags. If we are to look at it, it's done on Peter William McVeigh. Very small.
We can't see the details, right?
I will try to zoom in as best I can.
Okay, so we've done the search on Peter. And we've come up with, oh, look at that. PEP.
And the search
He is
result
also 13 years old.
Oh, Peter.
No search result.
How are you affording that home?
I think Mum's acting.
Yeah, that'd be right. Have we got Mum's details? Okay, right, so yeah.
Okay, so at this point, if we, I hope that satisfies where to navigate and how to find this. It's definitely once you've placed that order, it has been done, and steps have been completed by your end client on the VOI, and results have returned on the politically exposed person sanctions adverse media check, and the KYC know your customer onboarding form has been completed by the client and returned to you. This can always be found and within the matters and triSearch.
Can you do a PEP sanction just on a completed KYC? Or do you need the verification of identity done as well?
No, you can do it separately. So you can literally run a name through. The reason why you do VOI first is you want to make sure you've got the right name.
Yeah.
Because if someone says, "Hi, I'm Bob," well, are they really Robert, Storey, or are they Bob Storey as a proper name? Because when you do the screening, if you use Bob Storey versus Robert Storey, you will get different results.
So I'm just thinking how conveyancers are concerned about when they start the designated service, but they're not going to get the VOI until after they've already started for a purchaser.
then they can at least send them a KYC, get that back, or just get their full name from initial instructions, which they would get providing a 66W, say, for example. And they could do that subject to them then proceeding purchasing. And then post-exchange is when we would normally send the VOI request.
Which is fine,
right?
At this current time, the system is triggered based on a VOI, and that's what commences the order. I think we should keep an eye out for some directives or publications from our end, triSearch's end, on whether that's going to be updated and changed. I know that the early conversations I've had with some clients is they may need to look to start to VOI before, at the same time, and know the person that you're acting for and know who they are before you go and take them through a process. I know that does change, and operationally understand why Conveyancers have opted to do a VOI after exchange. This may require...
Well, for the purchaser, you have got delayed due diligence. So legally, you're allowed to commence that initial client due diligence.
So would you hold off on everything and get them through in that circumstance? Is that better than starting a KYC form?
If they're a new client, you have never done work for them before, they turn up 3 o'clock on a Friday and say, look, I want to bid for this place at auction tomorrow, can you help me? Your priority isn't necessarily this at that point. Your priority is helping them get the property.
You'd want to make sure you had a reasonable ground to understand that they are who they say they are.
Exactly. So I think you'd be adding in, and at that point you'd probably say, yes, I'm happy to do that while I'm doing the review and everything. Could you complete this form for me? KYC for me.
And it depends very much on how you're interacting with them. If they're in front of you, you can say, well, I just need to establish your identity, for my paperwork. Can I have a quick look at the driver's license? That's pretty easy. Whether it's digital or whether it's a hard copy driver's license, that's the easy bit. But generally speaking, in that scenario, I imagine you're communicating by email or through an online platform or by phone. So it is hard to establish clearly the identity of the person on the other end.
Now be mindful, I'm asking these questions for those people who are concerned about when their designated service starts and when they should be getting their VOI. So under that circumstance example I just gave, you're not going to be able to do that. Yes, you do have time after exchange of contracts to conduct all of that. I'm talking about looking at both sides where people might feel more comfortable in proceeding, regardless of whether they're successful at purchasing or whether they want to wait until whether they've purchased the property or not and then commence the work. It's totally up to the individual business what you put in place as your procedures.
Within the law, obviously you've got the Act. So you've got legislation that says when you should be doing all this, right? And then you've got rules that help define the details that are in the Act, and then you've got guidance from AUSTRAC. So you've got to consider all these aspects. These are built into the compliance centre, so you need to follow that process. Yes, there is delayed due diligence for a purchaser. So if you're acting on behalf of a purchaser under that scenario, you have got relief within the Act in certain circumstances, and we're very happy to talk about that in a bit more detail as well a little later on, I believe.
Yeah, I think just time-wise we'll push through. And I've just been advised that I think there's a few viewers that are struggling with some issues on their system. I'll quickly just go back to our support email if you would like it. It's support@triconvey.com.au. That's the best email. I know that's going to go live to our team that's ready and willing to assist you guys, and just step out your query as best you possibly can. Okay.
Cool.
Just time-wise, I'm going to try to push through now into what we call, I guess, the actual AML, the work that needs to be done right now.
Yeah, this is the important part because this is your risk assessment of that customer. So you've gone through and done the checks. So now you've got something to look at that says, okay, do I accept the risk of dealing with this particular customer, the MLTF risk?
That will be found in the AML summary tab. It will sit there next to your VOI order. You will see this cleanly in your triSearch tab in TriConvey, or if you're a website user in the same way that I'm looking at it right now. This loads you into a bit of a summary page for this one particular individual and onboarding them in this process. Well, I guess from a functional point of view, we see a short summary of some of the answers that have come back in from that Know Your Customer form that's completed by them. And all of the checks are still there if you'd like to view and have a look at them. Then there is the manual step.
Yeah, that's right. This is really important because essentially what you need to demonstrate is that you have considered the MLTF risk of dealing with that particular customer, and you've then risk assessed that customer, and you've formally recorded that. And then you can act according to the risk of dealing with that particular customer, whether it's low, medium or high. So let's have a look and see what it looks like when you get this decision to make. So for Peter, we have got overall some risk factors to consider here. So is the real estate of high value, $1.5 million?
We can run some examples here with yes it would be, but possibly there was a mortgage.
Yep, so let's go with that. Yep, let's tick no for that one.
Oh, this says high value property without mortgage. It's a yes.
Yeah. Are we going to do without a mortgage or with?
Yeah, it says he,
We'll go with.
he says he has a mortgage with CBA.
Yeah, so we
So
can go
that's-
with no.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's been
Yeah, 'cause
purchased
it's
with
a
a mortgage,
yeah,
yeah.
sorry,
So
got
it is
it.
no,
Yep.
we're not triggering that particular
Yeah, we
risk.
did a double
Got
negative.
it.
Did a double negative
Got
on
it.
you, Jenny, just to trick you.
Yeah.
Trap for young players
As
there.
if I haven't had
myself
enough
as well.
coffee.
Yeah, exactly right. Physical currency, is he going to come in with flipping great wedges of cash? No, he's not. He's pretty standard. He's got a mortgage.
Yep.
Okay.
Virtual assets, no, not interested. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Unusual service. Is there anything about this that is strange? Is there no apparent sort of economic reason, or is he just buying a house or a property? Yeah, the answer is unusual service requested, no. Then we get into the client risk rating. Criminal or unusual activity. Do we have any reason to think that there's been any criminal or unusual activity? At this stage, we've done the screening against adverse media. Nothing has come up, so that's a no. Domestic or international PEP? Well, now we do know that he's said yes
Certified.
to a PEP. So if we go back up
We do
here,
have.
he's a member of Parliament. So we need to go
we
back
come
down
back in?
here.
Oh, I should have saved those results, but we had no all the
dear,
way
oh
through.
dear.
The system was going to catch me out eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
So-
domestic or international, yes.
Yes.
Ding. So that flagged a medium risk factor. So we've got to consider that when we're thinking about dealing with this particular person. Foreign PEP. Do we have foreign PEP? I don't think we did. I think we're
no,
No, he's
no,
a
he's
domestic
domestic
PEP.
PEP.
Yeah.
Non-enrolled third party. No one's acting on his behalf. It's just Pete. Any unexplained wealth? No reason to think there's any unexplained wealth. It's pretty standard. He's not a charity. Now, remote channels, yes. So the chances is we've never met him and we're not going to meet him. So we tick yes. Now that helps us then determine the level of risk of the individual and the scenario that we're dealing with. Did you want to tick no? Is that what you're going to do?
I was going to go no for a low attempted
Okay.
low
Right.
risk
Press on.
initial, and then we can come back in and
Try a little-
trigger
something a
different
bit more
mediums.
difficult.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so medium risk country. So we've gone with that.
Is it straight?
Is the client in a medium risk country? No, they're a low
And,
risk
and this is showing up because we initially in our risk assessment had selected
we would accept.
external companies.
Yeah.
If it was
Yeah.
just Australia-based, you would likely not see one of these options, I believe,
Yeah.
the medium or high.
So this is
zones
where
come
the
through.
risk assessment and deciding what risks we'll accept has showing up in the reality of the procedures. So the fact that we've said that we would accept a medium or high risk country as a country of origin, country of citizenship, means that we get asked that question every time we risk assess a client.
Yeah.
So
So if I didn't
That's
add
just
that
a
at,
little
at that front page, yeah,
Yeah.
it would be less questions
if
to
you said
answer.
only
but-
dealing with Australians,
Mm.
then you won't get the question around, is this a medium or high risk country necessarily?
Okay.
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 So
So,
let's go in through here. We've got no, then that's good to know. Update the risk.
okay.
So the risk questionnaire has been saved. Overall,
At the moment, because we did have that one medium but no secondary medium
Medium.
triggers, no
Yep.
high risk triggers, the rating has been manually updated to a low risk for this particular client.
and the particular transaction.
Transaction for this client, for this transaction. For the purposes of, let's dive down into some hairier questions on different situations.
I
that
just
might-
want to point out here,
Yeah.
let's make sure it's very clear that your VOI is not the only thing you have to do. Which a lot of people have initially
Oh,
thought,
yeah,
I get my
yeah,
VOI
yeah.
done. It comes back and says low, medium, that's all I have to do.
Well, the VOI doesn't tell you that. The VOI just
So the-
verifies.
No,
it.
but
Yeah.
other companies will do that.
Oh.
And so, but just
Okay.
getting your VOI done by a third party
Isn't-
doesn't mean that's the
right.
end of your AML CTF obligations.
Absolutely not.
No.
Yeah, really good point.
Okay. Time-wise, I want to be very quick with this. If we were to run into someone who did bring in cash into the business and do
Flipping
accepted
great
this,
wedges, yeah.
simply updating that question or answering that question that they did bring in cash, even though they might not have said this, would update a risk rating for this particular person for this particular transaction to high risk.
Yeah.
Um,
Now then, What do we do about that?
What do we do about this, Richard?
So, I mean, for a high-risk scenario, high-risk client scenario, that will trigger then enhanced client due diligence, which is something that we haven't sort of really talked about or touched on in any great detail. But effectively what it means is going to more depth and intensity around our AML CTF checks and our assessment of whether and how we're going to manage this transaction, manage the risk of the transaction itself and the person. So when doing enhanced due diligence, that is triggered whenever you have a high-risk customer, a high-risk transaction like this, you need to understand where the money's coming from. That's kind of the first thing, because we've already covered off the reason for them doing business with you. We've covered off their identity. We've covered off whether or not they're in adverse media, etc. Now we need to understand, okay, well, we understand all that framework of risk, if you like. Now let's talk a little bit about this specific transaction. So because it's high risk, we really do need to understand where the funds have come from. So that means we need to go into the source of funds, source of wealth. So
what would happen
And
at
you
this
send
point?
that to the client
Yeah.
for
So
them
what,
to complete.
in terms of showing this in a demo environment, I'm quite limited, and I
Yeah.
haven't got what it will receive on the
Yep.
negative end.
Yep.
The blurb explains as much as it possibly can, but it effectively sends a request to the client to provide more information and submit some financial information.
the way this works in the Compliance Centre is that effectively you're asking the client to upload their bank statements. Now, then the Compliance Centre technology runs a review of the statement line items to try and identify, okay, so is there a sufficient amount of data just in their bank statement that explains where the money's come from? That may not be enough, or it may be enough. So for instance, if you are dealing with, I don't know, Albo, the Prime Minister of Australia, you know what he earns, and it'll appear as a salary from the Government of Australia, probably, I don't know. And I imagine it would be a certain amount of money. You might then be able to understand from previous conversations, Albo, small family, limited cost, zero cost for his accommodation, probably zero cost for his food, etc. Living costs, zero. So if he's earning, $600,000 a year, netting out whatever it might be, $25,000 every month, that might well be enough to fund the purchase. So that bank statement alone, for someone in a prominent position that's easy to understand what they earn, might well explain source of funds, source of wealth. You need to dig deeper if it doesn't explain that just from the bank statements. And that comes down to questioning and talking to the client.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the additional feature or most necessary feature is the escalation option.
So no matter what those answers are, you need to escalate from the compliance officer to the senior manager in order to assess the risk and decide whether or not the business continues to deal with that particular customer in those high-risk scenarios. So you've got to change hats. If you're a one-man band and you're doing this as a client onboarding process, you come up with a high-risk scenario, you send out the request for information, which is the request for bank statements, you gather in all that information, you then basically, as the senior manager, need to review that information and decide what to do next.
Yeah, and the functionality here is to give that senior manager as much information as you possibly can as the person who's completed those checks on what they found, and they will still have access to the entire onboarding steps. It will always be there, but explains what you found and possibly what you need them to look at. I'm limited within the demo data about submitting this and where that would actually go and what that looks like, but it is all managed within the Compliance Centre, that landing page. There are escalations that sit there and are ready to be
With the your
addressed.
client form, can you get access to that and send that separately to a client as a PDF for them to follow? I'm getting some questions where they don't have you'll send it, but they don't have the ability to answer it and send it back.
Can
you do that?
I think the connections that are needed within the system and to pull it in and is needed to be completed in a digital format, so far as I understand it from a software and tech side. And I know this has come up in some questions, and this might be where it is completed with the client or on the phone with the client.
Yeah, so can we get a copy of that separately? If a client, like an elderly client's coming in and they want to do it all in front of you, can we get a copy of that form to fill out?
The way the system would work at the moment, it would still go to the client, to their email, but you would ask them to bring in access to it and maybe help them go through that form, or they can forward that.
Alternatively, look, I mean, certainly as a conveyancer, you've got access to the conveyancing starter kit and the AUSTRAC forms library. You can use the AUSTRAC KYC, client onboarding form, out of there for an individual for that scenario. And that way you're gathering all the data that you need, you can then input that into the Compliance Centre.
Yeah, that's a good, and still complete that form.
Yeah, absolutely.
To just speed through so we don't run too over time, The final checks, if you were to be finally onboarding this particular individual for this transaction, there is a checklist to go through. It is designed to help you make sure you haven't missed a step and nothing is incomplete. We would go through and save, and then this particular transaction could be onboarded, even if it is the high risk and it has been escalated, that decision's been made. You'd have the option to onboard. The offboarding option to pull them off your system is still sitting there. They either didn't complete things or outside your firm risk. That is an AML side that you can pull them off. Legalities, we will leave that up to.
Just some of the questions, you know, I think it's pretty, but let's just confirm them. I think we've answered and it's obvious, but please confirm if AML CTF check is required for each customer, or is it only if they are suspicious?
Each customer.
Each customer.
And we said that in unison.
Each customer.
Everybody, each customer.
Every
Absolutely.
customer.
Yep.
Even if they're low.
So this was, so yeah, like I guess the focus of this session, so I know there's a lot of questions about the minutiae of how you implement it. The focus here today was to try and get you all so that you were at a point that you've created your risk assessment, you've created your policies and procedures, so now you've got an AML CTF program. That was the important part today, because now when you've got a program, you can enrol with AUSTRAC in confidence. You can then start doing things like training your staff and onboarding. And these are the actual obligations you've got before 1st of July.
Yeah.
You don't have obligations right now around your clients. You don't have those until the 1st of July. So focus, please everybody, focus on getting your AML CTF program developed through the Compliance Centre so you have the program. Focus on getting your compliance officer, your governing body, through the personnel due diligence, and then really focusing on staff training and the implementation path next, not right now. So, you know, I do think we probably need to touch on that.
Yeah,
staff
it's an important point. Piece. Yeah, important point to make.
Come back to at the end of the session. We can come back to some of these more detailed questions that are troubling for people.
Yeah.
And I think we've also got other sessions lined up around some of these implementation points, things like, you know, enhanced client due diligence, reliance, those things. We've got other sessions on those too. We really just wanted to get you so that you have an AML program that's compliant, ready for the 1st of July.
Yeah.
Yes, you do need to verify source funds if they're providing it in full or shortfall funds. Yes, you do. That's part of it, regardless of whether they're low, medium or high. When should you ask for funds and source of wealth? When?
So I think, look, we really are digging into the details
I
here.
know, but this is,
we're
part of hands-on.
Yeah.
But, okay.
So
this is where we're getting loads of questions on
clarity
that.
around source of funds, source of wealth, just quickly.
Yeah.
That's triggered by high risk scenarios.
Yes.
It's not triggered by normal procedures through the business in a low or medium setting. Okay, so it's source of funds, source of wealth is important in a high risk scenario. That's a part of an enhanced client due diligence. So just because someone's bringing in a large amount of money doesn't necessarily mean that it's a high risk scenario. Okay, so it goes back to your risk assessment, your policies and procedures. That's what drives what you do next.
So let's make this clear for people.
Yeah, sure.
They've got a client, Australian citizen, they are 50 years old, they've sold a property or that's their first purchase, they're buying it for purchase. Everything about them is low. They're buying it for cash. We don't need to look at source of funds.
No, because you've already just talked through those source of funds. You've already established that through the process of working with the client.
That's what they're saying to us, Okay, great. That's the thing they want to know.
Yep.
So you only need to ask for and click that button and send that form to source of funds where they're coming back as medium or high.
Well, as high.
It's just as high.
As high.
Okay. Okay, hope that helps everyone. So,
I think,
because the majority of our clients will be low.
Yes. I was going to say, so on the balance of things,
Absolutely.
on the balance, how
Yeah.
many of these are expected to be flagged as high? I mean, it's a bit of a...
There's no estimate around percentage of this, right?
Yeah.
So it is going to be, the high risk scenarios, you will generally know when you're facing a high money laundering and terrorism financing and proliferation financing risk. You will sense it. If you've been running a conveyancing business for some time, you will know when there's something off, something is not right.
Yeah.
So, you know, think about the way you've operated for the last 10 years, as you said before, Jenny. Think about the last 10 years. How often did you feel something was off?
Yeah.
That's about how often you will have a high risk scenario.
Yeah, and let's focus on your practice. Your practice, the majority of your clients are going to be low. We're talking about that small percentage of people where you've got to do enhanced due diligence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So can we just quickly, while we're running out of time, just touch on these
time-wise.
last couple of steps that are really important, Jenny, for people to establish
For sure.
as part of their obligations before the 1st of July. So we've now got the program we've built. That's great. We've gone through and we've nominated who the compliance officer is, who the governing body is, the other way around, did the governing body first.
Yep.
And now what we need to do, once we've got this program, is we now need to train our staff, basically, and talk about how do we implement this new AML CTF program.
Yeah.
So if you want to...
Staff training navigation, I mean, we looked at it at the start very, very quickly, but again, the Compliance Centre, which I hope by now everybody's very comfortable accessing, we've been doing it a few times in that top right corner of any of your triSearch screens. The training tab will exist. Now this will exist for anybody in any role that is there. Anybody and everybody in your system will have access to the training tab. We did speak about these and how they were designed to operate.
Yep.
The intention is very much that every staff member sits down.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Every staff member should go through this basic training about AML. There is then the role-specific training
the
videos
quizzes.
coming up. Yeah, that's right.
And the
The quizzes for these after these videos demonstrate that you've actually done the learning process.
Yep.
So you've picked up what was put down, basically, and you've got those concepts, those basic concepts around AML.
And they can always go back to these, right?
Yep. Yep.
They're
If
always
they're-
accessible. Yeah.
Everyone
Yep.
does it. You can do it as often as you like. You need to do AML refresher training at least once a year, typically. And then there's also role-specific training, as I mentioned earlier, and there's those specific videos that are landing in the Compliance Centre probably end of next week.
Yeah.
I would say.
And I
for
just talked to,
compliance
I've got a lot of questions around the higher risk. There is a really good module, probably the only one I've actually truly watched, to understand a bit more about what enhanced customer due diligence
Exactly.
looks like.
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of meetings and conversations. Richard has a lot of information. I picked up a lot. It's definitely one that gets asked a lot. I agree with you.
Yeah.
There's a good module there, and just direct all of your staff to have a look at that and really understand it. I think that's a really good module that we're looking at. Once it is all completed per staff member, remembering that the compliance officer and firm and governing bodies can monitor the training, the intention is to make sure that they have completed all of this training before 1 July. And you will see the status updating.
Yep.
If there are, for any reason, any staff that haven't, then you run the
Give them a
risk.
kick up the bottom.
You run the risk of being non-compliant from that day with that particular staff member providing a designated service.
Yep.
So it is very much a directive. I know I've had some clients that have either done this all jointly over lunch, and they do one module a day, and they've worked their way through them. And it's a bit of a more open format, but still done individually on their own systems. Otherwise, it wouldn't log that they did it. So you can do, in terms of how you do this, I think different businesses are finding different ways and using it as an open format.
Excellent. So that's the training piece. The other key piece of the obligations by 1st of July is understanding and being prepared to report to AUSTRAC if you need to. So the AUSTRAC reports clicks you through, that tab clicks you basically. The idea is that if you're going to place a report as of the 1st of July, it's probably going to be a suspicious matter report. And so you need to prepare yourself as to how to do that. And there's really good instructions in AUSTRAC Online.
In AUSTRAC, yeah.
Yeah, because you need to do that in the AUSTRAC Online portal. That's where you place your suspicious matter reports.
Yeah.
So you just need to have the compliance officer and understand how that works. So you need to have a look at that AUSTRAC Online, have a look at there's actually a really great series of, there is a video, but there's also a series of screenshots that step you through what you would need to do in order to file a suspicious matter report. If you are accepting large amounts of cash, a transaction over $10,000 in cash, you would also need to file a threshold transaction report. And again, details on the AUSTRAC Online website. The integration to AUSTRAC Online for reporting is being built out. It's a bit of a negotiation.
Isn't it with AUSTRAC
Ongoing.
themselves
absolutely.
keeping cards close to their chest, so to
Yeah.
speak?
Yeah.
Are they still trying to work things themselves out?
Well,
to a
they do that
degree?
for the really large reporting entities.
Yeah,
So
okay.
a place I used to work at, there were literally in the thousands of suspicious matter reports and threshold transaction reports every month. That had an integration. But they do it with reporting entities rather than with compliance software providers as a typical rule.
Yeah,
So it'll come through eventually, but at the moment, your number of suspicious matters is going to be very low. You might have 1 or 2 or 3 a year, tops likely, and same with threshold transactions.
Yeah.
So that's all you need to do is brief yourself as a compliance officer on that reporting piece, and then really you've fulfilled those obligations for the 1st of July.
Yeah.
One thing to talk about really quick is the reliance agreements. I know there is some functionality within the system. We do have our reliance webinar in a week or two. I think I have been blessed with the the role of being in that one again, which is great. But it will talk about what this means and how it looks like.
It's very
in terms
important.
of sharing onboarding checks
Yeah.
with real estate professionals, particularly There will be a link in the chat for you guys to access that and enrol yourselves if you would like to know more about the reliance piece. It can be quite interesting from conveyancers.
I think the most important thing here to acknowledge is on something we talked to AUSTRAC about when we were building the starter kit and what that all meant, was there will be times when an agent will approach a conveyancer or lawyer and say, can we rely on your VOI? What is the risk to the conveyancer and lawyer? The legislation covers you there. You do not get caught up with another party failing to do their AML compliance because they've taken a copy of your VOI and then have not conducted their further inquiries. You are not caught up by that. If you want to feel a bit more safeguarded, you can send it to them and say, this is sent to you for information purposes only. You must complete your own AML requirements. I think in situations where an agent may have done a VOI before you've had a chance to, you can rely on them well. But the legislation does protect you from any possible claim against that in the future.
There's a very specific way to work through reliance provisions though.
Yeah.
And so it's very important that you attend that webinar because as a conveyancer you may well get asked by a real estate agent or other parties to the transaction so as to reduce the impact on the consumer. Can we rely on your KYC processes?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is not just a simple yes, here you go, mate.
Yeah.
The answer is, through the Compliance Centre, you can share documentation of that reliance agreement or reliance arrangement. And that's important to do it the right way. So as you do have the protections that you're talking about, Jenny, just willy-nilly sharing VOIs is not a thing
enough.
to do.
And just for real estate agents watching this, I'll put my REI hat on. A third party doing your VOI and offering that service to you is not the end of your responsibility. They will give you a VOI. You, who is the appointed compliance officer, governing body in your agency, still needs to complete their AML check.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. I think we're
into the Q&A.
Into the live Q&A now.
Let's
And
go.
Chris, thank you for joining us as well.
Looking forward to it.
Coming back. I will, in terms of the questions.
Jenny, have you got some questions there for us?
I think there's quite a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, there were. I think it comes down to what we talked about before. I think it's up to the individual business as to what level of enhanced due diligence that they're required to do. It's very clear now from today. We do not need to do it for low risk. That is going to be the majority of your clients. Certainly in conveyancing, I think. When they are high risk, that is when you have to do enhanced due diligence. If you need to look at source of funds, you click that button that is sent to your client to complete and provide documents to you. So I saw some questions about that coming through. So the Tri-Convey Compliance Centre is set up to help you go through all those sections, send the relevant document, questionnaire, know your client form to your customer, and it gets sent back to you so you can complete your AML obligations. I think in terms of staff training, there is the training videos are very good. And the quizzes are very good because they do ask you questions that you have to watch the video to know it. You're not going to ask your staff to read the hard version of the starter kit, but it does give you a really good guide. Like if they've passed it, they've received the certificate at the end, they understand it. And you can have ongoing training with your staff as and when things need to be updated. We get alerts, you have ongoing. If you are thinking of joining and setting up with Tri-Convey, then the onboard training is very detailed as well. So think about that. If you're already onboarded with someone else, just make sure that they are giving you the same training and providing you with the same documentation, and that it's not just about giving you the VOI report and that's it. If that's what you've signed up to do, that's no problem, but make sure that you do the ongoing due diligence for your firm to complete your obligations.
Well said. I think if people have got any questions as they go through the rest of today's session, feel free to reach out to your relevant account manager in triSearch and Mark and the team. And I know Maria's involved as well, answering some questions, or jump on to support@trisearch.com.au. Then we should be able to answer all those questions. But please keep them coming. It doesn't stop as of at the end of this session today. But I think that brings us to an end of our Q&A session. And what a session it's been. Before I let everyone go, I just wanted to take a moment to thank and acknowledge the people who made today possible. Richard from Grant Thornton, the clarity you brought to today's activity, and it's genuinely complex legislation was exceptional. The practitioners in this virtual room are now better prepared because of the time and expertise you gave us. Thank you to you and the team from Grant Thornton. Thank you.
Definitely.
Mark, thank you very much, mate. You've demonstrated today in the Compliance Centre exactly what triSearch and the team provide. It's practical, it's accessible, and it's genuinely useful. So well done. Thank you for making it real and tangible for everyone watching, and a revised performance next week on the Reliance webinar. So good luck with that. And Jenny, this all started with you. I was just recalling with Camilla here a while ago how back in, I think it was January, February timeframe, it did start with you. Across the ARC New South Wales community, you mentioned REI New South Wales, and frankly the wider conveyancing profession across Australia owes you a debt of gratitude for what you've and the investments you're making, and standing up and saying we're not going to wait. We're not going to wait for things to happen. We're going to act. That's leadership, and it matters to the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
I know conveyancers.
Yes.
They want to be ready by 1 July
Exactly.
and ready to go.
Yeah, well, your representation and your leadership, it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you very much. Before we close the laptops, here's a couple of things that I'd suggest we do next. If you've started your AML CTF compliance today, even partially, you've done something that the vast majority of your peers have not done yet. Don't let the momentum stop here. Log back in tonight or first thing tomorrow and keep building. If you need support, our team is here. Reach out to us at support@triconvey.com.au and we'll help you get across the line. Most importantly, the recording of today's session will be sent to all registrants next week. Please share it with your colleagues, not just yourself. Please share it across the community and in your network who weren't able to join us today. The enrolment numbers we shared at the start of this session tell us there's thousands of practitioners who still need to take this next step, and you can help them find their way to it. 3.5 hours ago, we said the next 3.5 hours would matter. I hope you've proved that today. AML CTF compliance isn't just a regulatory requirement. It's about the integrity of the property transactions that Australians trust every single day. Today, you took a very real step forward, meeting that responsibility, and that's something worth recognising. On behalf of the entire team at triSearch, Grant Thornton, Jenny and Cremorne Conveyancing, and everyone who contributed today, thank you for your time, your engagement, and your commitment to getting this right. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Oh, well done, Mike. A little round of applause.